Bastard, the information is not accurate at all. He reached out and touched the blood on his face. His eyes were gloomy, and his heart gradually sank. According to the information collected by their Wandenrake, Ikemara Jin was only a captain-level Shinigami. When facing their stern Ritter, he should not have the advantage at all. However, it was this person who was evaluated as an ordinary captain class, who was marked internally as someone who did not need to be particularly concerned, who actually broke his blood vein. This kind of strength was too different from what the intelligence said. When you are distracted in battle, are all Quincy like you? Isn't it too unprofessional? Ikemara Jin's whisper suddenly sounded in Quilja's ear, but it was particularly cold in Quilja's ear, as if he was stared at by a poisonous snake. Puff. Blood sprayed. Even if he urgently used the Hirenkyaku and switched his blood to blood artery, Quilj was still hit by the Zanpakuto of Ikemara Jin, leaving a scar on his body again. Because you know you can't defend, so you chose to dodge. Your judgment is right, but your speed is still a bit lacking. With a symbolic smile on his face, Ikemara Jin directly revealed the weakness of the other side. Even if he used the blood vein, he still couldn't resist the destructive power of the spear, and he would still be injured in the attack, and in that case, he could not avoid Ikemara Jin's attack at all. But if he gave up on defense, if he turned to use blood artery, as long as he was hit in the vital point by Zanpakuto of Ikemara Jin, he would be dead. His Zanpakuto was too fast. With a gloomy face, various thoughts flashed through his mind, but he never thought of a good way. It seems that not only the battle over there, but my side is also about to end. His eyes turned slightly and looked at the battlefield of Muyang on the other side. The later Big Quincy was hit on the head by Muyang. There was no reaction until now. It seemed that he was dead. I really don't know how Stark was defeated. How can it be Mr. Masculine was actually defeated in an instant? Don't lose, sir. Come on, Big Star. Stand up quickly. A bald little fatty stood on the edge of the hole created by Masculine's fall. He clenched his fists and shouted, just like a little fan. Is this ability that Stark said? Standing in the air, Muyang's sight saw through the dust and saw the Quincy lying on the ground. At the same time that the little one spoke, the body of the Quincy, who had been dying and lying on the ground, suddenly poured out a force from the body of the Quincy. He suddenly stood up from the ground. Not only did the injury on his body recover, but it seemed to be much stronger than before. Star flying kick. A voice suddenly came from the ground, and then a figure suddenly sprang out, breaking the smoke in the sky. Masculine's legs were tight, and he flew towards Muyang. Feeling the speed of the other party, Muyang's eyes narrowed slightly. At this speed, his strength would not be weak. Muyang turned his arm and blocked Zanpakuto's blade in front of him. After all, this was a good opportunity to measure the strength of the Quincy. He had to feel the level of the enemy. Bang! A powerful force came from Zanpakuto, and Muyang's arm couldn't help but tremble. The force was very strong, but it could still be endured. I didn't expect you to be able to launch a counterattack after suffering such an injury. After taking a few steps back, Muyang calmly said. I am, masked a masculine. Their support is my strength. All the muscles in his body were tight, and Masculine said loudly with a smile on his face. As long as there was the support of his fans, the Super Big Star as a friend of justice would never fail. No matter what the enemy was, they would be defeated by his own hands. This has been verified many times. I see, support. The power of Quincy is really strange. Shaking his hand, Muyang's face changed into a look. By the way, what is the you are talking about? As expected of a villain. As Shinigami's villain, do you want to get information from the hero of justice? But as a big star, I want casually reveal our secrets. Although he looks like a fool, he is very tight-lipped. It seems that I can only kill you and then investigate myself. A mere villain, you really boast shamelessly. You actually dare to say that you want to kill the hero of justice. Yes, do your best. Defeat him, big star. After hearing the fans call, my whole body is full of strength, and the power that is constantly gushing out of my body is like burning me to ashes. After letting out a loud cry, the power on masculine became stronger. He stepped on the ground, and his body was like an arrow leaving the bow. He shot toward Muyang with a cloud of smoke and dust. The air also made a burst of sound. Big star. He's like a clown. With a cold look in his eyes, Muyang reached out with his left hand and pressed down on the other party's head. What? Feeling that his collision was actually held down by Muyang with one hand, a trace of disbelief flashed in Mask's eyes. After the support of his fans, his strength was now several times stronger than before, and he was actually suppressed so easily by Muyang. Come on, big star. Seeing that masculine was pressed by Muyang on the head and could not move forward, James, who was standing in the distance, suddenly opened his mouth and shouted. The moment he opened his mouth, almost visible to the naked eye, the muscles on masculine suddenly expanded a size. Muyang suddenly felt that the strength in his hand had become a little stronger. Humph. With a cold snort, Muyang waved the sword in his hand, and a light green blade light shot out from his zanpakuto. Poochie. A bloody crack suddenly appeared on James' body, extending down from the top of his head and splitting his body in half. Big star. Damn it. He actually attacked innocent fans. Seeing the end of his die-hard fan, James, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He twisted his body and stood in front of Muyang. His fists were clenched in front of his chest, and the veins on the back of his hands bulged. A star-shaped pattern appeared on his fist. Look, it appears together with anger. The star crest that appears on the fist. This is exactly the star card chosen by God to strike the villain. A villain like you who attacked innocent fans is the most unforgivable. Take my punch. The star kills the iron fist. The entire arm was covered in blue veins. Masculine's fist fiercely swung down at Muyang's head, bringing with it a burst of explosive sound. Judging from the momentum alone, it was no longer inferior to Yoroiki's Hakuda. How is it, villain? When the star crest appears, my attack power will become 10 times more ordinary. This is the so-called Iron Fist of Justice. Die obediently under justice. With a happy smile on his face, Musk fiercely swung his fist. He seemed to have already seen the scene of Muyang being smashed in the head by him and spilling brain matter. A villain, a star. It really makes people lose their appetite. Also, don't talk about the so-called justice with a self-righteous look. His body turned to the side and grabbed the other side's arm. Muyang's eyes were cold, and his right hand moved. A knife light flashed, and blood splashed. Ah! Bastard! You dare to cut off my arm. Holding his broken arm, Mask screamed with a painful face, and bright red blood flowed down his fingers. His eyes bulged out because of the intense pain, and his whole face became distorted. Even if there is a powerful force, you are just a weak guy. Don't say that you have completely mastered your own strength, you can't even use it skillfully. If Quincy is a guy like you, I am relieved. Damn it, you bastard. With a malicious look on his face, Masculine stared at Muyang with his eyes wide open, looking as if he wanted to eat Muyang up. You, a mere Shinigami, a mere villain, how could a superhero like me lose to you? Don't you think so, James? That's right. James, who had been cut into two by Muyang, suddenly shouted, waving his arms as if nothing had happened and loudly supporting Masculine who had lost a hand. What? This is still not dead. Seeing James, who had been cut into two and still maintained a vigorous life force, Muyang could not help but be shocked. There was actually such a guy. His body was still broken into two, but compared to him, the virtual super speed regeneration was nothing. However, With a flash of his eyes, Zanpakuto quickly waved the sword in Muyang's hand. A knife light flashed, and James, who had been cut into 2 pieces, directly turned into 18 pieces. Come on, super big star. Although his body had been cut into pieces, every piece of James had become an independent individual, and his mouth was still calling out to masculine loudly. Woo! A huge amount of energy continuously surged out of my body. Boom! Star energy has been replenished. The clothes all over his body burst apart, leaving only a pocket cloth wrapped around his key parts. Masculine's body was full of explosive muscles, and there were many star-shaped badges on his body. His face was also covered with complicated patterns, and a terrible momentum was emitted from his body. Villain Shinigami, your scenes are over. Go to hell. The scene is over. This sentence should be given to you. You really are an idiot who can't see the situation clearly. Hearing what Masculine said, Muyang revealed a sneer on his face. The ability of this guy opposite him was almost completely understood. In other words, there was no meaning for him to exist anymore. The one who can't see the situation is you, Shinigami. The muscles all over the body bulged, full of visual explosive feeling. Masculine twisted his body, and a powerful force gathered on his arm. Take this move, this is my killing move to gain true strength. Star capture fall. As Masculine's voice fell, his fist suddenly swung out, and an attack was swung out from his arm. The arm was raised, and the cross was folded in front of him, blocking the attack from the opposite Quincy. Muyang's eyes showed a hint of seriousness. This level, ordinary captain would not be able to withstand it. How is it? I, who have obtained true strength, can even defeat a villain a kilometer away. Is that all? He reached out and patted his clothes. There was not even a scratch on Muyang's body. He suddenly raised his arm and raised the Zanpakuto in his hand high. A ball of green light flashed on the blade. In the light green light, there was a powerful Ryoryoku, which made people tremble. Danger. Although I don't know what this move of Shinigami's is, I can clearly feel that this move of his is very dangerous. And dangerous things must be eliminated. Just as he finished speaking, Masculine's body suddenly erupted with a powerful aura. A pentagram made of Raisure suddenly appeared above his head, and behind him. A pair of wings formed by Raisure appeared, just like the previous Quilge. It could be called the final form of a Quincy, the Volstandig. However, no matter what kind of danger it is, in front of the super big star wrapped in God's might, it will all disappear without a trace. You will be destroyed by me and turned into dust. As he spoke, Masculine's body danced in the air, outlining the shape of a 5-pointed star. Take this. The shining star. A pillar of light in the shape of a 5-pointed star shot out from the air, carrying a terrifying force as it attacked Muyang, who was on the ground. Just as Masculine was preparing his moves, Muyang suddenly let out a sharp cry as he raised Zanpakuto high up in the air. The things around him seemed to feel an invisible force, constantly trembling. A dazzling light suddenly flashed in Muyang's eyes. Facing the pillar of light shot out by Masculine, Zanpakuto suddenly swung out his hand, and a cyan slash shot out from his Zanpakuto. The cyan slash collided with the light pillar in the shape of a 5-pointed star of Masculine, effortlessly tearing apart the impact of Masculine, and rushed towards Masculine with an unstoppable momentum. How is this possible? Seeing that his most proud move was actually torn apart by a slash, Masculine's eyes were full of disbelief. This was really beyond his expectations. How could it be the big star? Staring blankly at Masculine, whose body was torn apart by Muyang's slash in the air, James, who had been cut into several small shapes on the ground, let out a low wail. Damn it! He let out an unwilling cry, and a blood-red mark appeared between Masculine's eyebrows, and then his body disintegrated in the air, turning into ashes and disappearing. Don't die, big star. Really? Looking at James, who was still in disbelief and constantly shouting, Muyang revealed a sneer. He had already been completely wiped out. It would be useless no matter what he did. Although something incredible had happened before, and the seriously injured guy suddenly recovered under the support of this little thing, the current situation was not something that could be achieved by recovering. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Muyang's face suddenly revealed an extremely shocked expression. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the sky. A familiar Ryoryoku gradually appeared there, and he was slowly becoming stronger. How is this possible? He looked at the vague outline in the air in horror. The guy who had been destroyed had really come back to life again. The big star and James are of the same mind. Only one person is alive, and the other will recover. Hearing the words from James behind him, Muyang was shocked. He was indeed careless. He knew that Masculine could recover through James' support, but he did not kill him decisively. He thought that as long as he killed Masculine, he would not be afraid of him recovering. He did not expect that such a thing would happen. Thunder roar cannon. With a swing of his arm, his palm aimed directly at James. A cold light flashed in Muyang's eyes, and a blue pillar of light suddenly shot out from his palm. Under the palm of his hand was James' frightened face. Bang! A figure suddenly appeared in front of Muyang. A tough fist blocked the ghost that Muyang had sent out, protecting James, who had no resistance at the critical moment. The heroic big star came back from heaven with more powerful force under the call of his fans. Are you ready to be punished? Damn villain, in order to protect your fans, the big star will not give you any more opportunities. Die, Shinigami. With a shake of his body, he directly opened the complete holy body. The momentum of Masculine was more than a level stronger than the previous battle. This level of strength made Muyang secretly surprised. He did not expect that after death, his strength would become stronger. I really learned. I really did not expect that you Quincy are so different from what I understand. But rest assured, the next time I fight with you, I will not have any luck. I will completely crush you, and even the dregs will not be left. Putting his hand on the hilt of his own Zanpakuto, Muyang said as he walked forward. The Zanpakuto in his hand slowly pulled out of the scabbard. As Muyang stepped down, a strong momentum slowly accumulated on his body. When he finished his words, the momentum emitted by his body had made the hearts of Ikemara Jin and Quilge in another battlefield tremble. In order to thank you for teaching me a lesson, I will let you die a quick death. As soon as he finished speaking, Muyang's feet flashed, and his figure suddenly disappeared. Swish! A dazzling saber light suddenly blossomed in the air. The layers of saber light were like a peacock spreading its tail, easily capturing everyone's attention. And under the extremely bright saber light, there was a strong killing intent that made people's hearts tremble. Just by the residual attack, it made the people on the side feel cold all over, and a fear rose from the depths of their hearts. When his feet landed on the ground, Muyang's face was calm, and he slowly and leisurely returned the Zanpakuto in his hand to the sheath, with a calm and light expression. A breeze blew, and the clothes on Muyang swayed gently in the wind. Behind him, there was a deep gully that could not be seen. As for Masculine and James, this time, there was really not even a speck of dust left. Looking at the terrible scene caused by Muyang's strike, Quilge, who was facing off with Ikemara Jin, flashed a touch of horror in his eyes. This degree of destructive power was really unheard of, and the most terrible thing was Muyang's reaction. It seemed that he still had a lot of strength left. In this way, how strong his real strength was really unknown. An unknown place. The palace covered in ice and frost suddenly existed in an unknown space. The architectural style was completely different from Seoul society, revealing a strange feeling. The sunlight that shone from nowhere fell on the palace, reflecting the cold light. At the side of a majestic door, there were people standing. They were wearing white standard cloaks, covering their faces under the cloaks. It made it impossible to see their faces clearly. They were all filled with a mysterious feeling. At the front of the crowd, a majestic and domineering figure stood. Behind him, the blood-red cloak moved without wind, leaving a dense black hair. The thick black beard on his lips added a bit of tyranny and dominance to him. Huh! The man standing at the front suddenly opened his half-closed eyes and raised his eyebrows slightly. "What's wrong, Your Majesty?" A man beside the man asked as he moved half a step forward. Although he was asking, there was no trace of emotion on the face of the man who asked the question. His light blue eyes were deep and calm, like a calm lake. Coupled with the golden hair hanging down from his forehead, he revealed an elegant temperament. Even if there was no expression on his face, he still gave people a feeling of nobility. "Masculine is dead." "Oh." Hearing His Majesty's answer, the blond man's indifferent eyes showed a little surprise, but it was just a little bit. Although the death of a powerful member of the Sternritter was a big deal, it was only that much. At most, it was just a little surprise to him. It seems that there is a mistake in the information. He reached out and touched the headset in his ear. After hearing the information from the other side, the blond man looked at the emperor in front of him and reported, "Muyang, who was originally judged to have lost his threat, has now been proved to have strength far beyond captain level. Even Ikamaru Jin, who is in the same line, also has the combat power beyond ordinary captain. The two members of Sternritter who went to stop them before, namely Quilge and Musk, are now dead, and Quilge has sent back the messenger of the battle." After reporting the information received, the blond man looked at the emperor in front of him. "You're worrying too much, Hashwolf. Isn't this better? They are still in Hueco Mundo, and now they are facing Quilge. In this case, what happens next is not up to them. Just take advantage of the fact that he is unable to rush to Soul Society now. I will lead the Sternritter to Soul Society and ruthlessly ravage them." A bloodthirsty light flashed in his blood-red pupils. The black-haired man suddenly raised the cloak behind him, and his whole body emitted a terrible evil aura. The bodies of the people standing behind him trembled uncontrollably, and then a high momentum emitted from each of them. As for Hueco Mundo, let Gremi deal with him. Even with Hashwolf's indifference and calmness, a trace of surprise appeared on his face when he heard the name that came out of His Majesty's mouth. His Majesty actually sent that monster to deal with Muyang. In this way, the Hueco Mundo would be messed up by him. However, as His Majesty's best assistant, as long as he carried out His Majesty's orders seriously and firmly. In the crowd behind him, a guy with curly bangs on his forehead suddenly showed a touch of relief after hearing the words of His Majesty in front of him. He also did not expect that His Majesty would release that monster for the sake of this battle. That guy should be locked up all the time. However, it was probably the only fortunate thing that he did not need to fight with that guy on the same battlefield. Otherwise, with that guy's character, he would definitely make everything a mess and he would also be affected. Sternritter, attack. Can they actually snatch our Bankai? In the main room of the 13th Squadron, all the captains were present, and all of them had cautious expressions on their faces. Chur Hitsugaya, who came back from the virtual circle from the modern world, has told all the information he currently knows to head captain. Of course, the most important thing is that Quincy can seize Shinigami's Bankai. It must be known that the highest level of combat power in Shinigami is captain. The reason why he can be above countless other Shinigami in Surider is because of the existence of Bankai. This is also an important evidence of their captain. Of course, Zaraki Kenpachi is not included in this. Now it is suddenly told that Quincy has a device to seize Shinigami's Bankai. How can they not be shocked? And according to the information brought back by Chur Hitsugaya, Quincy has a strong power. Even the captain-level Shinigami can never defeat the enemy without using Bankai. Captain Kuratsuchi, now I need you to tell me how long you need to crack the enemy's device, and the ability to analyze the enemy. Yamamoto Genryusai, who stood at the front, suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold light flashed in the depths of his calm eyes. All the captains present could clearly feel the suppressed anger in Yamamoto head captain's heart. In the face of this state of Yamamoto Genryusai, Kurotsuchi Mayuri also put away his usual attitude and looked unprecedentedly serious. I have never seen this device before. It is a completely new technology, but in 3 days at most, I can completely analyze this device. Well, I will give you 2 days to find a way to restrain the device. Yamamoto head captain, Kisuke also has such a device in his hand, and it is a device with Suzuki Kusu's Bankai that has been seized. I think Kisuke should be able to study it clearly soon. In this way, we may be able to use more energy to explore other abilities of Quincy. Yes, but even so, we can't completely ignore this matter. We can't pin all our hopes on Kisuke Urahara. Captain Kurotsuchi, you have to continue to carry out this matter, but you can put more energy on other things. I know. Looking at Chur Hitsugaya with dissatisfaction, Kurotsuchi Mayuri took back his eyes and said. Now is not the time to quarrel, but this guy dares to question his ability. After this matter is over, he must be good. Boom. Both hands grabbed his walking stick and stamped on the ground. Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes suddenly opened, and there seemed to be a flame burning in his eyes. Although the enemy has not officially fought with us, but there is no doubt that the war is about to begin. We don't know when the Quincy will appear, and we don't know how they will start to attack, but from now on, Godiai 13th has officially entered the state of war. Each division is to carefully patrolling their respective jurisdiction areas, and cannot relax the slightest vigilance. In addition, 2nd Division is responsible for the communication of the information in the whole Siriidii, and also eliminating the hidden dangers in the Siriidii, to ensure the stability of the court. According to the report of 2nd Division, 3rd Division is ready to support all aspects of the battlefield at any time, and 4th Division members are all to stand by in the Siriidii, absolutely cannot be mobilized. 5th Division members are responsible for sending the seriously injured division on the battlefield to 4th Division for treatment. 8th Division is responsible for investigating all the preserved information about the Quincy, and must get more advantageous information before the battle begins. 12th Division analyzed the ability of the enemy in the shortest time and informed all division members. The responsibility of 13th Division has not changed, even if there is a battle, absolutely cannot ignore the hollow. The rest of the 6th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 11th Division, prepare for battle with all your strength. Now is the time for you to protect the Siriidii. Even if the bones are broken, you must protect the complete and dignity of Soul Society and 13th Division in the next battle. As for me, I will personally lead all the members of 1st Division to hold the center. Dismissed. It's really worrying. Nanao-chan. Walking out of the team's main room, Kyoraku Shunsui reached out to press his bamboo hat and looked up at the sky. Blue sky and white clouds were still the peaceful sky of Soul Society. If it was before, now Kyoraku Shunsui must be thinking about where to hide and quietly sleep, or holding the wine pot to find someone to drink 2 cups. But at this moment, he could not find any leisure mood. War. The mouth softly revealed the arrival of the war, and Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes showed a trace of caution. Even with his lazy character, he knew how dangerous the next thing was. Even Aizen's rebellion was far from it. He also knew about the war 1,000 years ago. Once that person was involved, the next thing was already related to the survival of the whole world. Unohana Retsu walked with her eyes closed in the last face of the captains. Her face was still calm, but her palms hanging on the sides of her body were unconsciously clenched. The frowning eyebrows also responded the turmoil and uneasiness in her heart. As one of the members of the first generation of Godiai 13th, she clearly knew the horror of the man, and it was because of this that she felt a sense of uneasiness about what was about to happen. Ha! With an arrogant smile on her face, Zaraki Kenpachi strode toward the direction of 11th Division. He did not care about anything else about this war. The only thing he knew was that there would be an unprecedented battle next, and many powerful enemies would appear. He could also fight with many powerful fellows, and this was the time for their 11th Division to show. Looking at Zaraki Kenpachi's back, Hitsugaya frowned. As the only captain who has been in contact with the enemy, he deeply knows the horror of the enemy strength. That so-called, the strength of the people inside is absolutely not weaker than any captain. If there are more than 20 enemies of that strength, Soul Society is finished. Hueco Mundo. Looks like you're going to fight to the death. Sensing the change in his aura, Ikemara Jin smiled slightly and his aura changed. Even he couldn't remember how long he hadn't fought seriously. His character determined that he would always be like a poisonous snake, hiding in the dark and waiting for the opportunity. The fox mask on his face covered all the emotions in his heart. No one could figure out the true feelings in his heart. However, from now on, he no longer needed to hide. What he needed to do now was to become a sharp knife and cut off everything in front of him. Because in this world, there was the most important person to him. Kamishini no Yari, dance step. He held his own Zanpakuto with both hands and placed it in front of his chest. The blade was facing Quilge on the opposite side. Ikemara Jin's eyes, which had been closed all the time, suddenly opened. There seemed to be a trace of scarlet light flashing in his cold blue eyes. Being stared at by those eyes, Quilge only felt like falling into hell. His whole body was cold. Just as Ikemara Jin opened his eyes, Quilge was shocked by the cold killing intent in his eyes. When they were in a deadlock, a cold light flashed between Ikemara Jin's hands, and Zanpakuto in his hand became longer in an instant, with a cold killing intent stabbing to Quilge's body. A gloomy breath came head-on. Quilge suddenly came back to his senses from his absent-mindedness, and then his pupils suddenly contracted, and the white blade still stuck to his cheek. Puff. At the critical moment, he tilted his head, but Quilge was still unable to completely dodge Ikemara Jin's attack. The cold blade cut Quilge's cheekbones, tearing a large piece of the bone on his face, revealing a large piece of flesh on his face. The whole person looked particularly miserable. Damn it! He took 2 steps back. Quilge's face was full of anger, not only because he was injured by Ikemara Jin, but what made him more worried was the future of their Sternritter and the Wandenrake. With his understanding of His Majesty, once he learned that there was such a fighting force that could affect the whole war, and now appeared in the void circle that had been controlled by them, His Majesty would definitely take advantage of this time to attack Soul Society. Perhaps at this moment, His Majesty had appeared in the sky of Soul Society. I'll use my life and trap these 3 people in the Hueco Mundo. With this thought in his mind, a trace of determination flashed through Quilge's eyes. Swish. Before his body could do anything again, another attack flashed in front of Quilge. Blood strike. The previous matter had been confirmed, and it had no effect on Ikemara Jin's attack. If he didn't want to die, it was better to use it obediently. After all, in this case, maybe he could escape. Sure enough, when Quilge used it, Ikemara Jin's blade only passed by his face, but did not hurt him again. Quilge did not have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Another knife light appeared in front of him. Damn it! How is this possible? How can his speed suddenly become so much faster? Quilge's forehead was full of sweat. He struggled to avoid Ikemara Jin's slash. Even if he had used it to the limit, he still could not defend against Ikemara Jin's attack. His attack was too fast. Not only the speed of his attack, but also his movement speed was also equally amazing. Swish. Ikemara Jin's figure suddenly appeared in front of Quilge, holding his short Zanpakuto in his hand and slashing down from above. It was too late to escape. Dang! The sword in his hand suddenly lifted up and blocked in front of him, blocking Ikemara Jin's slash. Quilge relaxed slightly in his heart and finally caught up, not being cut by his Zanpakuto. Got it. The Zanpakuto in his hand was blocked by Quilge, but the corner of Ikemara Jin's mouth suddenly hooked up. Shit! Seeing Zanpakuto in front of him facing his Ikemara Jin, the pupil of Quilge suddenly shrank. This guy's Zanpakuto could freely stretch and shrink, and the speed of stretching was very fast, if he was aimed at by his Zanpakuto like this. A touch of bright white became bigger and bigger in the eyes of Quilge. The dark white knife light contained a cold killing intent, which almost made Quilge feel desperate killing intent. Puff. A figure quickly retreated. The clothes on his body were destroyed in the battle, making him look a little embarrassed, but at this moment, Ikemara Jin had a smile on the corner of his mouth. Although he was indeed affected a little, but compared with the other side, it was much better. His left arm was drooping weakly, and there was a trace of defeat on his face. Even if he reacted at the last moment and dodged at the first time, one arm was still broken, and the next battle was even more difficult. It seems that this boring battle is finally going to end. Looking at Quilge, who had his limbs crippled not far away, Muyang said softly. Since the first time he was hit by Ikemara Jin, the ending was already determined. In this level of battle, as long as there was a slight disadvantage, he would die. Standing behind Muyang with his hands folded in front of his chest, Harabel had no expression on his face and just looked coldly at the battle over there. For her, whether it was Shinigami or Quincy, they were all enemies and had nothing to do with her. Suddenly there was a strange feeling in her brain, and Harabel's eyebrows slightly raised. The current Hueco Mundo was different from before. It was basically the headquarters of Quincy. Now there were only 3 people in the enemy's hinterland, and Harabel could not be careless. Therefore, since she came to Hueco Mundo, the probe nerves in her brain had always been in a state of activation. Just now, her probe nerves suddenly detected a trace of incongruity, but there was no substantial information detected. What's wrong? Sensing Harabel's abnormality, Muyang turned his head slightly and asked. No, it's nothing. Since there was no definite feeling, it was better not to say it out. Perhaps it was because he was too nervous. As he thought about this, Harabel shook his head slightly and suppressed the feeling of disharmony in his heart. Looking at the slightly strange expression on Harabel's face, Muyang's eyes flashed with a hint of realization. It seemed that not only him, but Harabel also felt a trace of disharmony just now, as if he had forgotten something. Don't worry, my Bankai is very fast. With a strange smile on his face, Ikemara Jin pointed the tip of his Zanpakuto to Quilge, who was not far away. Under normal circumstances, he disdained to kill this kind of guy who had lost the ability to resist, but now it was a war. Kamishini no Yari. A bright white light flashed in his hand, but just as Ikemara Jin's hand burst out a dazzling light. Quilge, who was lying not far away from him, suddenly moved. A pair of wings made of spirit particles spread out behind Quilge, and countless tiny spirit lines formed by spirit particles connected to his limbs. With the help of those thin threads, Quilge, who had been crippled, instantly disappeared from the spot at an extraordinary speed, and then appeared behind Ikemara Jin. The sword in his hand pointed to Ikemara Jin's back, and Quilge showed a strange expression on his face. Although he was dead, at least, at the last moment of his life, he wanted to give his last strength for the future of Wandenrake. Ikemara Jin, who had his back to Quilge, had no panic on his face. Even the enemy who should have been disabled suddenly stood up and disappeared in front of him at an abnormal speed. His Zanpakuto, which had been stretched out, had recovered his shape at some point, with a sly smile on his face. The Ikemara Jin Zanpakuto passed through his armpit, and the tip of the blade was impressively facing Quilge. In Ikemara Jin's hand, his Zanpakuto burst out dazzling light again, and at the same time, Quilge's face was full of enthusiasm, shooting out a ball of light from the tip of his blade. Puchi. The sharp blade easily penetrated Quilge's chest, destroying all his vitality. Long live the Wandenrake. A wisp of blood slipped from the corner of his mouth, and Kiki Luji's face was filled with a satisfied expression. Although he had indeed died, his attack had also indeed hit the enemy. What is this? Looking at the thing that was like a cage that trapped Ikemara Jin not far away, Muyang's eyes flashed a trace of astonishment. It looks very similar to Shinigami's Kido. Harabel said, But this is definitely not Kido. The composition of this erasure is completely different from Shinigami's Kido. Perhaps it can be said to be the opposite. Muyang said. This thing should be the unique skill of Quincy, but he did not know that this was a move that all Quincy could use, or the unique skill of the dead Quincy. Looking at Ikemura Jin in the cage, Muyang's eyes flashed with a trace of caution. He could see that Ikemura Jin was seriously attacking and trying to destroy the cage, but the result was very unsatisfactory. Even when Ikemura Jin attacked the cage did not have any damage. Ikemura Jin attacked so fiercely, but we can't hear any sound outside. It seems that thing has the ability to isolate sound. Yes. Anyone trapped by Quilja's prison, no message can be transmitted to the outside world. A voice suddenly sounded behind Muyang. Puff. A cold light appeared, accompanied by drops of blood falling to the ground. Who are you? It was unknown when Zanpakuto had been unsheathed. At this time, he was hanging by Muyang's side. There was a trace of blood on the blade. Looking at the enemy retreating into the distance, Muyang was slightly shocked. Before the enemy spoke, he actually did not notice it at all. As if he had seen through the thoughts in Muyang's mind, the old man with a strange face grinned and said. There was a hint of a smile on his face, as if he was mocking something. Let's continue with the previous topic. Quilja's script is, J. Quiljopi the jail. If you are hit by his ability, you will be trapped in the erasure cage. That thing is very difficult to destroy. Script, J. It seems that I have heard some incredible news. Ah, it has been so long since the battle. I thought you already knew about these things. It seems that I accidentally leaked the information. There was a trace of surprise on his face, but he immediately restrained it. The person changed into a nonchalant expression. But it doesn't matter. Yes, it doesn't matter. No matter what you say, it won't change the fact that I want to kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, Muyang had already appeared in front of the strange old man. Huh? A trace of astonishment appeared on Muyang's face. He raised his Zanpakuto in front of him. Why did the enemy that should have existed disappear? Wait. Who is the enemy? Fortunately, I took into account his speed. Otherwise, there would be another wound on my body. Not far in front of Kimura Muyang, the eccentric Quincy reached out and touched his chest, with a look of fear on his face. There was a trace of blood on the Zanpakuto in his hand, and there was indeed a new piece of information in his mind, but he couldn't remember the appearance of the enemy. This strange feeling made Kimura Muyang burst into his heart. Chill, what happened just now? Sha 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 sha. A strange laughter came from the front. Looking at the guy opposite him, Muyang suddenly had a strange feeling in his heart. He felt a familiar feeling from the strange guy opposite him. However, he had indeed never seen that guy. In his impression, there was no such person. Who are you? As soon as the words left his mouth, the strange feeling in Muyang's heart became even more intense. The doubts in his heart became more and more, and this scene always gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Shashashashasha, although I don't know how many times I'll have to say it again, let me tell you in our first meeting, I'm, V, the vanishing Ganail Lee. Although he had a ridiculous face, at this moment, the expression of the Quincy was undoubtedly serious. You cannot see me, feel me, or even keep me in memory of my existence. What? Just as Muyang was talking, the enemy in front of him suddenly disappeared without any warning. It was even impossible to know what method he relied on to disappear. In front of Muyang, his body suddenly disappeared. This is definitely not something that can be done by the Quincy's, Hirenkyaku. His eyes still stayed in the direction of the previous enemy. Muyang's eyes flashed a trace of seriousness. At the beginning, he could still feel the existence of the enemy over there, so he thought it was something like a cover-up, but then he could no longer feel the existence of the enemy. That guy. His mind suddenly became blank. He still had some impression of what had happened before, but Muyang could no longer recall the appearance of the enemy. Sha 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 sha. In front of Muyang, the strange old man stood there and let out a strange laugh. His body seemed to be in a different world from theirs. Although he stood in front of Muyang, Muyang and Haribel did not notice it at all, as if there was no one in front of them. That's right. You guys can't feel my existence at all. My ability has 3 forms. Form 1 is the disappearance of figure. Form 2 is the disappearance of existence. Under Form 2, the enemy cannot attack my body at all. At most, they can only feel the illusion left behind by the vision. And when I use Form 3, my existence will directly disappear from the enemy's consciousness. In other words, you will forget my existence. After his body twisted, the old man with a strange face appeared in front of Muyang again, with a strange smile on his face. Then, let's do it again. The first time we meet, I am, the vanishing Ganael Lee. This guy. Looking at this guy in front of him, Muyang frowned. For some reason, when he saw this guy in front of him, he felt a sense of familiarity, but there was no memory of him in his mind, as if he had forgotten something important. Without waiting for Muyang to slowly recall, the strange old man in front of him suddenly took out a dagger. He leaped and pounced towards Muyang. The blade in his hand flashed with a cold light. The weapons of Quincy are really strange. Shouldn't you use the bow and arrow? Looking at the enemy in front of him pouncing towards him, Muyang teased. A hint of ridicule flashed across his face. Looking at the other party's movements, he knew that he absolutely could not hurt himself. This was Muyang's intuition after experiencing countless battles. The Zanpakuto in his hand drew a strange angle and slashed down diagonally at Ganael. Muyang seemed to have already seen the scene of the other party's blood spraying out. Although there was indeed a strange feeling in his heart, this level of attack was simply like sending him to his death. Swish. A sound that broke through the air entered Muyang's ears. His expression immediately changed greatly. The attack that he thought was full of confidence actually missed. When Zanpakuto chopped down, it seemed as if there was nothing in front of him. However, in front of Muyang, the old man with a strange expression was indeed holding a dagger and stabbing towards his neck. He tilted his head, and the dagger flashed with a cold light as it cut across Muyang's neck. The cold blade caused goosebumps to appear on Muyang's neck. He suddenly raised his right leg, and a layer of green light flashed on his leg. Shio! Another sound of air breaking rang out. His right leg, which had been accumulating strength, still missed. Muyang's expression changed slightly, and with a flash of his feet, he directly appeared in the distance. His eyes looked cautiously at the enemy opposite him. When the enemy's blade cut across his neck just now, that cold feeling could not be wrong, but why did his 2 consecutive attacks fail? He could only attack by himself and not be attacked. This kind of thing absolutely did not exist. His body should be able to change between the real and the fake, but the speed of conversion is too fast, at least faster than the speed of my previous attack. In that case. Puff. What? A blood-colored crack extended from his forehead, and blood continued to spray out from the crack. Ganael rolled his eyes up and looked at the blood that had been left on his forehead. His face was full of disbelief. With his ability, as long as there was a little time, he could make his body disappear. In this way, no matter what kind of attack the enemy used, no matter what kind of attack they used, they could not attack him, but now. How is this possible? It's so far away, and you didn't move at all. The eyes that were already very big became bigger, and Ganael looked at the body of Muyang who was gradually disappearing in front of him, and his face was full of shock. Is this a remnant of vision and illusion? Only found out now. It's too late. Muyang, who had appeared behind Ganael at some point in time, said and pulled his Zanpakuto out of Ganael's body. Damn it! Ganael looked at Muyang's Zanpakuto, which had penetrated his heart, in a trance. Bright red blood spurted out from his chest, and his tone was full of unwillingness. He clearly had many hidden methods that he had not used, but because of a moment of carelessness, it ended just like this. With deep resentment, Ganael fell into the darkness. What's going on? Turning to look at the body of Quilge, who was still lying on the ground, Muyang had a flash of doubt in his heart. If the Quincy was killed, the dead body should be visible. Why did the body disappear after Ganael was killed? Oh, it was killed so quickly, but it was also expected by me. After all, it is just a vision of mine. Wearing a robe, wearing a hat on his head, hiding all his body behind the clothes, with his hands in his pockets, he looked like a middle school student going out for a stroll. The person had a pure smile on his face, but the words he said could not be associated with the middle school students. Looking at your clothes, you must also be from the Sternritter. Looking at the young man in front of him, Muyang held Zanpakuto in his hand tightly. Although the other party looked harmless, Muyang still felt a sense of danger from the young man in front of him, which was more dangerous than the previous few people. He was obviously so weak, and no matter how you looked at him, he did not look like a person who was good at fighting. Why did such a guy give me an extremely dangerous feeling? Forget it, let's try it first. Turning his palm, Zanpakuto in his hand crossed, Muyang moved his feet, and the sharp blade cut toward the neck of the new enemy. Pang! As soon as Muyang moved, a flame suddenly appeared in front of him. The fiery flame appeared out of thin air, beating chaotically in the air, turning into a ring that surrounded the new Quincy. Seeing the flames that suddenly appeared around the body of the Quincy, Muyang stopped. Poochie! There was a strange feeling under his feet. What his feet stepped on was not the ground at all, but more like a swamp. A wave of air burst out from Muyang's body, shaking off the mud that trapped him, and then a barrier made of rasure appeared under his feet. With a step, Muyang's body sprang into the air. Plop! His body suddenly drilled into a ball of water, and the water pressure from all directions let Muyang know. He was indeed in the water now, but it was really abnormal for water to appear in the air. Was it an illusion? Using some strange ability to make people hallucinate? It's not an illusion. As if seeing through the thoughts in Muyang's mind, the young Quincy standing on the ground said with a smile on his face, "It's not something like a spell, but reality. I can turn imagination into reality, Gremmy. It is your honor to fight with me, because I think that I am the strongest in the Sternritter. Turn imagination into reality. What a cheating ability." A resplendent saber light suddenly blossomed in the air. The large ball of water that was wrapped around Muyang instantly dissolved under the saber light. Bang! Muyang's body suddenly fell from the sky and fiercely smashed in front of Gremmy. A dense and dazzling light shone on Zanpakuto in his hand. As Zanpakuto waved, all the flames around Gremmy disappeared. Since it is imagination, let me split your imagined head in half. As Zanpakuto waved his hand, there was a misty light and shadow, and in a trance, it was as if there were millions of Zanpakuto slashing at Gremmy's head at the same time. Poochie! A huge wound appeared in front of Gremmy, almost cutting his body into two pieces. It's so dangerous. Fortunately, I avoided the head at the last moment, otherwise I would really be killed. Gremmy, who was half kneeling on the ground, still had his hands in his pockets. Although his body had almost been split in two, there was no nervousness on his face. However, you are really amazing. I clearly imagined that my body would be tougher than steel. I didn't expect it to be cut off so easily by you. As he spoke, Gremmy's body had already returned to its original state. Other than the blood stains on the ground, there was no sign of injury at all. Do you still have the ability to heal? Muyang frowned as he looked at Gremmy, who had recovered to his original state. He suddenly felt troubled. Facing an enemy who could easily heal his injuries in an instant was not something to be happy about no matter how he looked at it. This is not heal. With a smile on his face, Gremmy still looked relaxed. Muyang's attack just now seemed to have no effect on him at all. However, if you insist on saying this, it is not wrong. However, I just imagined that the injury was healed. Looking at Gremy, who patted his clothes with a relaxed face, Muyang's face was ugly. For such a guy, if he could not attack quickly, it would be difficult to affect him. However, even if that kind of cheating ability could not be used without limit, there should be some kind of restriction. Nonsense ability. You must think so, right? A person like you must be able to understand the fact that you can't defeat me no matter what. Gremy spread his hands in front of him, his eyes narrowed, making people unable to see his expression, but the mocking smile on his face made Muyang feel uncomfortable. I don't even need a finger. I can kill you with my brain. Before Muyang could move, he suddenly felt a tremor under his feet, and then the ground they were standing on suddenly rose up, and the place they were stepping on also turned into a hard ground. Although there are no spectators around, if I want to kill someone like you, there must be a gorgeous stage. Just the thought in his mind instantly produced such a huge stone, standing on the desert of the Hueco Mundo, and the methods that Gremy showed were terrifying. Ping! A large ball of lava suddenly appeared behind Gremy, and the hot lava changed shape behind him at will. Since the fire just now has no effect on you, come and try the lava. This is much hotter than the previous fire. Moreover, liquid things are more difficult to destroy than the previous fire. It is only difficult to destroy. There was no sign of retreat on his face. Muyang waved his hand and a huge slash flew out. Bang boom. The sound of a series of bullets echoed in the air, accompanied by the dancing of countless bullets and the flashing of fire. There was also the occasional sound of artillery bombardment. Almost every instant, countless artillery fire poured out. His body floated in the air as if he couldn't withstand it, but he cleverly avoided every bullet. Although there was no strain on Muyang's face, it seemed that he was also restricted in the field. He couldn't make any counterattack at all and could only passively dodge. Ha, look! With my imagination, even such a thing can be easily accomplished. At this time, Gremy had fallen into great joy. He had no time to distinguish the specific situation of Muyang. Just seeing that Muyang had no strength to fight back, he felt that he had locked onto the victory. So what? Hearing Gremy's words, Muyang raised his eyes and said lightly. As his voice fell, his body suddenly disappeared from Gremy's vision. Countless blades of light suddenly blossomed in front of Gremy. The shells shot from the weapons in front of him were all turned into pieces in an instant. Die! A cold light flashed in his eyes. Muyang coldly spat out 2 words. No matter how strong the other party was, if he did not give him a chance to react, he would be killed in an instant. The moment Muyang's Zanpakuto fell, a thick iron wall suddenly appeared in front of Gremy. Swoosh! Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand cut off the iron wall in front of Gremy without any obstruction, but the speed of waving the knife inevitably weakened a bit. For the contest between experts, even a breath of time was enough, and just as Muyang's Zanpakuto was delayed, Gremy's body had already flashed to the side. Oh, oh, oh. It's really amazing. No wonder His Majesty specially sent me here, I almost killed by you. Gremy, who took 2 steps back, still had a faint smile on his face. The previous thrilling scene had no effect on him at all. He had his own self-confidence. Even in the stern ritter that composed entirely of monsters, he was recognized as the most absurd of all. His existence was even deemed as dangerous. In that case, I'll give you something special. As he spoke, Gremy, who was standing in front of Muyang, swayed. Then, under Muyang's shocked eyes, an identical Gremy appeared beside the original Gremy. Looks like this isn't some simple clone technique. Feeling the aura of the newly appeared Gremy, Muyang revealed a trace of caution. This was definitely not an ordinary clone technique. This split person seemed to have strength that was not inferior to his main body at all. Of course not, this is I, the the other me. I can use my imagination to create life. In the current situation, both sides cannot be cut down, and neither side will die. Moreover, my imagination will directly multiply. Looking at one of the Gremi who was sent flying but was not injured at all, Muyang's expression changed slightly. His imagination could actually reach such a level. He really did not expect to meet such an amazing guy. The current situation was really a bit tricky. Then, I'll give you something you haven't cut before. Gremi said with a malicious smile on his face. Just as his voice fell, a huge pressure appeared above their heads. At the same time, a huge shadow shrouded the heads of Muyang and the others. You must be joking. Ikemara Jin, who was still trapped in the cage, looked up and saw what appeared in the sky, and the calm expression on his face suddenly disappeared. If he was just trapped in the prison, he was not worried at all, because he was confident to break free, but now this thing, even he could not keep calm. This power was simply beyond his imagination. Hunt, Tiburon. When she saw what was in the sky, Haribel, who had been watching the battle from the side, could no longer watch the battle in peace. She directly unleashed her resurrection at the first time, and a powerful Ryuryoku emitted from her body. Flash! Boom! Without the slightest hesitation, after resurrection, Haribel released her most powerful attack at the first time. The golden flash was waved from Haribel's hand, and it hit the thing that appeared in the air effortlessly. With a loud bang, countless gravel fell from the sky and smashed huge potholes on the ground. However, the thing in the sky continued to fall without being affected. The previous flash could not even stop it from falling. How is it? Even if you can avoid such a big meteorite, the guy trapped by Quilja's prison will definitely not be able to escape. If he is hit by this kind of thing, he will definitely turn into ashes along with the prison. All of you will die under the great destructive power of this meteorite. Only I will survive in the ruins. This kind of thing is too cheating. Looking at the meteorite that completely covered the entire sky, Ikemara Jin's face showed a helpless look. In the end, would he end up like this? It was too bad. If Ranjaku knew, she would definitely laugh at him. There are not many people like you even in the Quincy division. At such a critical time, Muyang could still remain calm. After looking up at the huge meteorite in the sky, he put his attention on Gremi and asked. Of course, didn't I say that I am the strongest in the Sternritter? Still with a faint smile on his face, Gremi added, assuming yes, it's just an assumption, it's not an imaginary thing, it's useless to assume that you can kill me right now, the meteorite is an existing fact, it won't disappear, and of course, with your ability, you can't kill me now. The meteorite fell here and wiped out all three of you, leaving me alone to survive in the ruins, just as I imagined, there is nothing you can do, Kimura Muyang. There's nothing we can do. The corners of Muyang's mouth curled up slightly, as if he had heard something funny. How ridiculous. I really don't know when my strength has been underestimated to such an extent. With a few chuckles, a terrifyingly powerful Ryuryoku slowly rose from Muyang's body. His body did not make any movements at all. It was just a simple release of Ryuryoku. The gravel around Muyang seemed to have been affected by some kind of power and slowly floated up. Even Gremi, who had been maintaining his confidence, was shocked when he felt this power. Buzz, 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 buzz. A sharp and ear-piercing sound came from Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand. At some point in time, his Zanpakuto had already been wrapped in a layer of silvery white Ryuryoku. Those silvery white Ryuryoku were vibrating at a frequency that was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Traces of pitch-black cracks strangely appeared around Zanpakuto. From those cracks, there was an extremely dangerous feeling. This kind of power, how is this possible? Seeing the abnormality on Muyang's body, Gremi seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His face suddenly revealed a look of disbelief. Although it was not to the extent of panicking, such news was enough to shock people. Why can you still use the power of Bankai without Bankai? Moreover, you should not be able to use Bankai anymore. Yes, who knows? With a cold face, Muyang's feet swayed and directly flew into the air. He only saw Muyang's arm waved, and then a silver knife light like a silver river hung from the sky, dividing the whole world into two halves. Click. With an inaudible sound, the meteorite that had fallen from the sky split into two under Gremmy's shocked eyes, falling in two different directions. In the crack of the meteorite, a hollow crescent moon emitted a dark light. How did this guy do it? Looking at the back of Muyang who was standing in the air, Gremmy's heart flashed with a trace of doubt. Although he did have a terrible ability, even something like a meteorite could be easily created through his imagination, but if he had to rely on his own strength to split the huge meteorite into two, there was no way. No. Not just him. In the entire Stern Ritter, there were few people who could do this. Even His Majesty. Just as Grammy was thinking of this, the figure of Muyang who was standing under the moon suddenly disappeared from his sight. Not good. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he didn't even have time to think about anything. A blade light as dazzling as before appeared again, and this time, the target of the blade light was him. The moment the blade light flashed, in the eyes of Grammy, everything in this world seemed to have slowed down. The Zanpakuto in front of him slowly fell down, and he could even see the black cracks that appeared along with the downslash of the Zanpakuto. However, what slowed down was not only the Zanpakuto in front of him, but also Gremmy's everything, including his Bodis movements, and even his thoughts. However, all of this was only the world in Gremmy's eyes. In Harabelle's eyes, Muyang's movements were simply incredible. She could only vaguely see a dazzling bright white blade light. Although Grammy watched Zanpakuto the downslash inch by inch and then cut through his body, he could do nothing. Even the thoughts in his mind became extremely slow. He could only watch helplessly as the Zanpakuto cut off his body. Then he felt the pain slowly transmit to his nervous center. Damn it! Everything in front of him suddenly returned to normal. The strange flow of time from before was instantly restored. Everything in front of Grammy returned to normal. The intense pain was transmitted to his brain in an instant. However, even his head that relied on fighting had been cut in half. With a bang sound, along with the splash of blood, Gremmy's body was cut in two and fell to the ground. How can this be? I have two bodies now. How can you hurt me? Although his body had been cut into two pieces, Grammy still had some consciousness for a while. After understanding everything that had happened to him, Grammy struggled to turn his eyes to the side. How is this possible? Not far away from Grammy, another Grammy corpse was lying there. At this time, he turned his eyes and looked at each other, feeling the horror of each other. In that instant just now, Muyang had actually cut off two of Grammy's bodies at the same time. However, how did he manage to get rid of two of his own bodies at the same time? Although it's a bit troublesome, it's finally over. Putting Zanpakuto back into his waist, Muyang revealed a relaxed expression. Over. What are you talking about? A familiar voice came from all directions of Muyang. The number actually increased again. Seeing the few Grammy that appeared around him, Muyang moved his hand and Zanpakuto appeared in his hand again. At the same time, a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that the Quincy were all such tenacious fellows? The previous one was like this, and this time was also the same. No matter what, they could not be killed. Fortunately, I had a backup plan. Otherwise, I would really have been killed by you this time. When he appeared in front of Muyang again, Grammy's face unconsciously carried a touch of relief. If he had not thought about his own body before, it would have been really terrible this time. After all, Muyang's blade cut him from head to toe. A more clone, right? Looking around, Muyang's face revealed a trace of understanding. Since he already knew his methods, then he would definitely not give him a second chance. My imagination is now 6 times what it normally is. In other words, my current strength is 6 times what it was before. You are finished, Muyang. Gremmy, who had been relatively calm, suddenly revealed a trace of madness on his face. After the series of setbacks before, even if his current strength became as strong as he said, he was no longer as calm as before. Several Gremmy who were surrounding Muyang stretched out their hands at the same time, and a dark space suddenly appeared behind Muyang. Muyang's body suddenly trembled, and a terrifying gravity seemed to tear his body apart. This is... since there is nothing that you can't cut off, then I will use something invisible to deal with you. You will be wrapped in the space of the universe and die. As Gremmy's voice fell, the black formless substance behind Muyang suddenly expanded. In just a blink of an eye, it covered Muyang's entire body. Ha 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 ha. In the space of the universe, body fluids will forcibly evaporate from the eyeballs and the adhesive membrane of the mouth. The blood that is exposed to the space of the universe will start to boil. If you try to breathe, your lungs will be destroyed. The body tissues will slowly collapse, welcoming the arrival of death. However, all of this is based on the fact that your consciousness can last until that time. Looking at Muyang, who was trapped in the universe space, Gremmy's expression twisted. Muyang was finally killed by him. This kind of situation was almost unsolvable. No matter what kind of person it was, they would definitely not be able to survive in such a harsh environment. Is this your trump card? You really disappoint me. Muyang's indifferent voice suddenly came from the black space. Under Gremmy's horrified eyes, he slowly walked out step by step. There was not a single scar on his body. How is this possible? Being in the space of the universe, no matter who it is absolutely impossible to come out unscathed like this. So this is all you have. Just seeing things that are beyond your imagination, you have already panicked like this. It seems that I really overestimated you before. A guy like you should not have many opportunities to fight, right? That's why you are so flustered when you encounter a little thing. Looking at Grammy, who was already in a mess, Muyang's face showed a trace of disappointment. After a few years of silence, he thought that he could fight happily. Who knew that this would be the case? This guy only had a lot of strength, but in the end, he was just a little brat. However, this is war. No matter who the enemy was, as long as he wielded the weapon in his hand, it would be enough to destroy it. Thinking of this, he raised his Zanpakuto above his head, and a silver-white light appeared again. Soul Society. At this time, the Siriidii was full of tension. Since the first meeting of the team not long ago, the captains of each team issued an all-out alert to the below, ready to fight at any time. The situation has been clear, and all the people of the entire Godii 13 know that the destroyed division in the rumor has come back. What they are about to face is a cruel war. It does not matter whether it is right or wrong, it does not matter whether it is righteous or evil, only victory or destruction. 11th Division Jurisdiction Area. Hey, although you are just a guy who just graduated this year, but you are also a member of 11th Division. How can you tremble in fear when there is going to be a battle? Get up, bastard. A slightly older team member looked at the young team member who was patrolling with him and patted him hard on the shoulder. This guy, in the end, is still too young. Although he has also experienced some exercise, he still can't be compared with the old members of 11th Division. They are the combat team of 13th Division, the battlefield is their stage. How can they tremble because of the coming of war? Who said I was afraid? I was trembling with excitement because I was going to fight. Although he said that he would not admit defeat, the trembling body of the team member and the pale face were enough to show everything. For the war between the two ethnic groups, even the combat madman of 11th Division could not help but feel fear. Well. Hey, you two. What are you doing? Get up. A voice suddenly came from behind them. Ah yes. Turning his head, after seeing a shiny bald head, the two 11th Division members' bodies trembled unconsciously and said loudly. This was the Madarame Ichigo and the Iasegawa Yumachika. Even in the entire Godai 13, they are well-known existences. Well, I don't remember that our team has cowards. Whether the other party is Hollow, Arankar, or Quincy, we have to do just the same thing, that is to kill them. Enjoy the next war, bastards. After saying something casually, Madarame carried his Zanpakuto on one corner of his shoulder, and the two of them continued to walk forward with Iasegawa. Really, Quincy or something, come out quickly, I have been waiting impatiently. This won't do, Ichigo. Although there was a smile on his face, the faint killing intent in Yumachika's eyes from time to time revealed his true state of mind at this time. Even if you say anything, the Quincy will not suddenly appear in front of us. I know, just what is that? Halfway through his words, a strange feeling suddenly rose in Ichigo's heart, and he suddenly looked up at the sky. In the field of vision, a figure stood above Soul Society. It was not only Ichigo who found this matter, but also a large number of Godai 13 Division team members who found this guy of unknown origin. Enemy. A team member shouted as soon as he found the person, and immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the surroundings to the person in the sky. It's okay. There is a soul-concealing membrane on the periphery of Siriidii. This guy can't come in. Everyone, don't panic. Seeing that the team members around them seemed to be showing signs of panic, a chief immediately shouted loudly, trying to calm down the team members who were panicking around them. No. One of the team members stretched out his finger and pointed at the guy in the sky with a hint of fear on his face. This guy is already inside the soul-concealing membrane. Boom. Dozens of light pillars suddenly rose in different places of Soul Society. Each light pillar emitted a rich aura of spiritual droplets. What is this thing? Looking at the pillar of light not far from them, Ichigo's eyes showed a hint of caution. The war had begun. The majestic king of Quincy Yawach stood in the sky of Siriidii, looking at Soul Society and the others who were busy below. His eyes were dull, and he did not know what he was thinking in his heart. Pathetic ravaged the Soul Society, my stern ritter. Boom. As Yawach's voice fell, more than a dozen light pillars with strong ratio fluctuations appeared in the street of Quiet Spirit Court below. Buzz. The moment those spiritual energy pillars appeared, everyone in the 13 Hall of Protection was alarmed. All the captains and vice-captains rushed out of their respective offices at the first possible moment. That terrifying spiritual energy fluctuation was absolutely not something that ordinary team members could deal with. What is it? Light pillar. 8th Division member Osaka Mizuki looked at the spiritual light pillar in the distance and his eyes showed shock. As a rookie who had joined the Godai 13 for less than a year, just hearing the news of the war had already shocked him. Originally thought it was impossible for the enemy to break into the Siriidii. People like him who had just graduated and had little combat power would not really go to the battlefield. Who knows, the war has only just begun, and they have already been involved. No. No. That's not right. That's not glowing. Although Hara Ichitaro, who graduated a few years earlier than Osaka Mizuki, forced himself to remain calm, the few drops of sweat that quietly slipped from his forehead still revealed the panic in his heart at this time. That's not glowing, it's burning. That's a blue pillar of fire. A pillar of fire? The surrounding team members all looked at him, unable to understand what he said. How could the words of a pillar of fire be like that? It can't be wrong. In the legends, Quincy can control ratio. The pillars of fire in the distance are high concentration ratio burning, and each of them is emitting a strong ratio fluctuation. It's terrible. This concentration of ratio. Damn it, how many experts are there? Looking at the pillars of light standing in the Siriidii, everyone's expressions turned ugly. The captain's office. Captain Commander. Chijiro Sasakibe suddenly appeared behind Captain Commander Yamamoto. Kneeling on one knee, there was a serious look on his face. What did the Captain Kuratsuchi say? The enemy's invasion method is unknown, but there are powerful ratio fluctuations in those ratio columns, and the ratio concentration is quite terrible. In addition, Kisuke has sent a message, asking us to hold on for a moment, and we must not use Bankai. Soon there will be something that can suppress the Quincy. Is that so? After listening to the report of Chichiro Sasakaibe, Captain Commander Yamamoto's face did not show any expression. He just stood on the balcony and looked at the chaos in the Siriidii. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and the back of his hand holding the crutch was exposed. It showed that his heart was not calm at this time. 3rd Division Jurisdiction Area. A beam of light happened to appear in front of Kira Izuru, who was patrolling. Ratio Investigation Division. Is it not done yet? Although he did not release his Zanpakuto for the time being, he was undoubtedly in a completely alert state at this moment. Just this beam of spiritual light in front of him that emitted terrifying fluctuations was already incredible, not to mention the enemies that might be hidden inside. Sorry. But the concentration of spiritual droplets is too high, the number measurement device is in a mess. A member of the Technical Development Bureau who stayed behind the 3rd Division team member had a few drops of sweat on his face. He was holding a machine in his hand and kept pressing it. It was the first time he had seen such a high concentration of spiritual droplets. Do you think it is inside? Riku. Kira looked cautiously at the light pillar in front of him, and his face was heavy. It was not a good sign that the enemy directly invaded the base camp at the beginning of the war. Although they would have the home advantage in this way, the initiative of the battlefield was completely controlled by the other side. Whether they wanted to fight or retreat, it was completely dependent on the enemy. Yes, there is no other place. The 3rd seat of 3rd Division, Riku Tagakushi, also had the same cautious expression. They all knew what it meant to be directly invaded by the enemy. What was more, they did not know the enemy's method of invasion at all. This meant that such a tactical enemy could continue to use. Come out quickly. I have been waiting for a long time. If you are yawning when the enemy appears, don't regret it if you are scared and bite your tongue off. You monkey. It seemed that they wanted to ease the heavy atmosphere, and the 5th and 6th seats of 3rd Division joked with each other. Report. I managed to analyze the Ryuryoku. The compatibility rate of Ryuryoku with the sample is 93, it is the Quincy. Hearing the loud words of the Ratio Investigation class behind him, the eyes of several people of 3rd Division suddenly froze. I see. Let's go. Seeing the hazy figure revealed from the spirit column, Kira's face moved and shouted, then he raised Zanpakuto in his hand and ran forward. Boom! A fiery pillar of light suddenly shot out from the front, and the blazing pillar of fire instantly pierced through Kira's body. There was no time for him to react at all. Whoop-hoo! A mouthful of blood sprayed out from the air. Kira's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion, and his body powerlessly collapsed to the ground. The aura on his body also disappeared in an instant. As the vice captain of the Godii 13, he was actually killed in an instant without even seeing the enemy. The strength of the Quincy was so powerful. Vice Captain Kira. It's a sneak attack, too despicable. Seeing Kira was actually killed in a face-to-face, the other 3 chiefs of 3rd Division were angry. Carry out Shirkai, don't let him escape. Blow it, Flute. Destroy it, Jean. Roll it up, Shunsen. Boom. The 3 of them had just released their respective Zanpakuto. Before they could make a move, a figure wrapped in a cloak rushed out from the beam of spiritual light. His 2 hands pressed firmly on the heads of the 2 chief officers. Then, he suddenly smashed into the ground. Immediately, blood splashed out. Riku, who was shocked in his heart, had just turned his head when he saw a blood splash in front of him, and then his body fell back weakly. Seeing the most powerful deputy captains and chief officers were all killed by the Quincy in a single move, without even a bit of resistance, the remaining players suddenly trembled and unconsciously took a few steps back. Sorry, the order we received was to kill all of you. Looking at the Gotei 13 team members who had regained the courage to rush forward, the Quincy mouth pulled out a trace of a ferocious arc. Technology Development Bureau. Looking at the huge dots of light that appeared on the radar in front of him, Akon's face was full of cold sweat. In Sirite, there are 16 enemies Ryuryoku. However, it is also possible that the location of Ryuryoku is due to the battle. The phenomenon of Ryuryoku disappearing in Shinigami's side has occurred. The police officers who are going to investigate have died before sending the information. Akon. The deputy captain of the 3rd Division's Ryuryoku disappeared, and the 3 chiefs of the same team, disappeared. 25 team members have died in the West 6-1. 61 died in the 2-4 area. Damn it! He punched the table in front of him fiercely. Although he had tried his best to keep calm, Akon still could not help but feel a trace of panic in his heart. It had only been 7 minutes since the invasion, but nearly 1,000 people had died. This was too exaggerated. How could such a war continue? Akon tilted his head slightly and looked at the captain's office on the other side. A trace of confusion flashed through his heart. Although as long as he had the advantage in terms of high-end combat strength, Soul Society would not lose in this war. But, thinking of the information he had learned before, Akon's heart rose a trace of haze. The Quincy is in control of the device that can seize Shinigami's Bankai. Before cracking that thing, the captain's combat effectiveness can't be played at all. However, the enemy with this level of strength, even if the captain, if he can't use Bankai, it is impossible to win easily. Hurry up, Mr. Kisuk. Looking at the screen in front of him that can contact Kisuk, Akon whispered. Kuratsuchi captain has been ordered by head captain to study other things about Quincy. Now in this case, how to break through the dilemma depends on Kisuk's research. As long as he can develop a restraining method as soon as possible, Soul Society can at least maintain the invincible situation. North District. 27 team members died. Vice Captain Kira's Ryuryoku has also disappeared. As Hell's Butterfly danced in the air, messages were sent to the captains and vice captains in the Siriidii who were in the middle of the battle. Is that so? I got it. With his eyes lowered, a layer of shadow covered Rose's face. Around him, there were team members who had lost their breath. They were in the corpses of many team members of Gotei 13th, and Rose's whole body was emitting a cold aura. It seems that there is no good news. Who is dead? The Quincy with a strange hairstyle stood opposite Rose, tilting his neck and asking. Although facing a captain of Gotei 13, there was no tension on his face, as if in his eyes, the captain-level character was not enough to make him feel nervous. Is there a need for me to answer you? His eyes were half open and half closed, and Rose's face was full of gloom. Even the tone of his voice was full of bone-chilling cold. Of course there is. Hearing Rose's words, the Quincy who was wearing a blindfold and completely covered the upper half of his face suddenly grinned, revealing a mouthful of teeth that made people vomit. The place where Ryuryoku disappeared just now was the location of Basby. If no one died, it meant that he had messed up. Gently raising the Zanpakuto in his hand and standing in front of the Quincy, a stream of Ryuryoku on Rose's body quickly accumulated. Although he could not use Bankai because of the scruples in his heart, as a figure who had been promoted to captain 100 years ago, he did not lack the means to fight against the enemy. It really isn't artistic at all. Rose's eyes fell on Zanpakuto in front of him. His tone was full of melancholy, like a low hum. Seeing Izuru constantly stimulates my inspiration. Standing near him, as long as I hold the guitar in my hand, the melody will overflow like tears. If Izuru is missing, my guitar would be sad too. Sorry, I really don't understand the topic of your art. The Quincy stretched out his 5 fingers in front of him, and the aura of his body changed in an instant. But don't worry. Don't cry anymore about your friend. Because within the next 5 minutes, you'll be dead as well. The other hand gently stroked his own Zanpakuto. The gentle posture was like playing an instrument, and Rose's face had some inexplicable emotions. Rose suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with killing intent that could not be concealed. Seeing so many of his subordinates die miserably at the hands of the Quincy made it impossible for him to conceal the killing intent in his heart. There was no need to conceal it. What he needed to do was to kill all the enemies in front of him. Don't think that you can return alive and kill me. In the sky, 2 powerful auras collided in an instant. What did you say? Quincy attacked Soul Society. Although he had heard from Kisuke on the phone before, Kurosaki Ichigo still found it hard to accept the news until now. But, isn't there only Ishida left? They are different from Ishida. A trace of inexplicable meaning flashed in Yoruichi's eyes. Now is not the time to talk in detail. In short, Soul Society is facing the biggest difficulty now. It is difficult to resist the attack of Quincy only by the captain of Godai 13. Although Soul Society has not asked for help for the time being, I think I should still tell you. As for what you want to do. Urahara-san suddenly opened his mouth to interrupt Yoruichi's words. Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Kisuke who was busy with something on the other side, his eyes full of determination. Please prepare the realm gate for me. I want to go to Soul Society. As expected. Putting down the thing in his hand, Kisuke turned to look at Kurosaki Ichigo with a smile in his eyes. The realm gate has been prepared for you. You can go down now. Sorry, the 2 of you can't go with Kurosaki. Suddenly reaching out to stop Orihime and Sato who were planning to follow Kurosaki Ichigo, Kisuke's eyes flashed with a hint of inexplicable meaning. Because he was in a hurry, he did not install the Erasure converter on the dimension portal. This time, only Kurosaki can pass. Ichigo. Just as Ichigo was about to enter the realm gate, Yoruichi suddenly called out to him. What's wrong, Yoruichi? Ichigo turned his head, a hint of doubt on his face. Before you go to Soul Society, I have something to tell you first. While speaking, Yoruichi's face was full of seriousness. Do not use Bankai. The enemy has unknown means and can take away Shinigami's Bankai. Take away Bankai. Hearing the words spoken by Yoruichi, not only Ichigo, but even Orihime and others who came to send him on the well, also cried out. The surprise brought to them today was too much. Bankai, Shinigami's strongest ability, is also an important certificate as a captain. According to the information they heard before, every Shinigami who learned Bankai will be recorded in the history of Soul Society. This kind of means that Shinigami thought by relying on, the Quincy actually has a way to take it away. Yes, this has been confirmed. Kusu's Bankai has been taken away by the enemy. What? Miss Kusu. At this time, several people remembered the Suzuki Kusu they saw when they first arrived at the Urahara shop, but at that time, because they suddenly heard the news from Kisuke, they were too surprised, so they did not care much. Now that they thought about it, the aura of Suzuki Kusu was really a little strange. In this case, Mr. Kisuke is now busy cracking that kind of thing. After listening to Yoruichi's words, there was a flash of realization in the eyes of Orihime. No wonder even if it were for open to the realm gate, Kisuke was completely handed over to Mr. Tessai. It turned out that there was more important things to be busy with. Yes, but even if it is Kisuke. Therefore, Soul Society is very dangerous now. Can you understand me saying this, Ichigo? After hearing the meaning of Yoruichi's words, Orihime and Sato Yasutora both showed a trace of worry on their faces. The current Soul Society was really too dangerous. Was it really safe for Ichigo to go alone? In the face of a group of unknown enemies, as the captains of Soul Society's highest combat strength, they could not exert their strongest ability without any scruples. In the absence of Bankai, it was a difficult thing. After all, if there was no powerful strength, Quincy would not dare to attack Soul Society. Although he was clear about Soul Society's current situation, there was no fear on Kurosaki Ichigo's face. On the contrary, his eyes became even more determined. After 2 years of retrieving Shinigami's strength, he was not as simple as just recovering Shinigami's strength. He could clearly feel that the powerful Ryoryoku contained in his body, even he himself did not know how strong he was now. Don't worry. With a bright smile on his face, Kurosaki Ichigo turned around and jumped into the realm gate without any hesitation. Don't let anything happen to you. Kenpachi, Byakuya, Toshiro, Ikaku, Yumachika, Ranjaku. The faces of Soul Society's group of companions crossed through Kurosaki Ichigo's brain one by one, and finally fixed into Rukia's smiling face. Kurosaki Ichigo stepped on the ground, and the speed of his forward could not help but increase a bit. Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo's figure disappear into the realm gate, Yoruchi took back her eyes and turned to look at Orihime and Sato standing beside her. Just now, because Ichigo was here, there were some things that I did not say directly. This time, Kisuke did not install the Ratio converter on the dimension portal not only because of time. As her eyes swept over the bodies of Orihime and Sato Taihu on the well, a light flashed in Yoruchi's eyes, and no one knew what she was planning in her heart. There are some things that need to be done together with the strength of the two of you. In the room of the Urahara shop. Suzuki Kusu did not follow up to see Kurosaki Ichigo off, but stayed in front, cooperating with Kisuke's research. After all, she was the only one who had her Bankai taken away. With her help, it was somewhat helpful to the device of the Quincy. Looking at Kisuke who was constantly busy, Suzuki Kusu turned slightly and his eyes fell on Ishida Yuri. The bodies stood in the same place, Ishida Yuri's eyes were scattered, and the whole person did not know what he was thinking. The breath on the body was also floating, apparently a great blow. Ishida Yuri, who had always considered himself as the last Quincy, had completely carried out the honor and responsibility of the Quincy. When he suddenly heard this news, it was already a good performance for him to have such a performance. He didn't know when, but his face was already sweating a little. Ishida Yuri's hands hanging on the side were sometimes clenched and sometimes loosened. Obviously, at this moment, Ishida Yuri was full of struggle in his heart. Ishida-san. Raising his head slightly, Kisuke's gaze fell on Ishida Yuri who was at the side. A trace of deep thought flashed through his eyes, and the face hidden under the shadow of the hat made it impossible to see his true thoughts. Ah! As if he had just woken up from a dream, Ishida Yuri raised his head, and there were a few traces of blood in his eyes. It was obvious that the thinking just now had consumed a lot of his mind. I know that the current situation makes it very difficult for you. We won't force you to make any decisions. No matter what, it is better for you to make the decision yourself. Although his mind was still in great shock, Ishida Yuri still tried his best to gather his thoughts and calmed his mood, and his eyes were also barely calm. Sorry, Urahara-san, Suzuki-san. The corner of his mouth pulled out a forced smile. Ishida Yuri raised his foot and walked out of the door of the Urahara shop, walking slowly in the direction of his home. I wonder what kind of decision he will make. He retracted his gaze from Ishida Yuri's back. Suzuki Kusu looked at the thing in front of Kisuke. Kisuke's research seemed to be about to end. There seems to be nothing here that needs my help. I'll go back and take a look first. Also, there are some things that I need to tell them. Suzuki-san. Kisuke called out to Suzuki Kusu, who was about to get up and leave. A strange light flashed through her eyes. If possible, can I trouble you to ask Yukio and Ruruka to come over to my side? There are some things that I need their help with. No problem. Although it was a bit strange for Kisuke's request, Suzuki Kusu still agreed without hesitation. She knew that Kisuke was definitely not a person who spoke without thinking. In order to deal with the most dangerous situation, it is better to make plans early. Looking at the direction where Suzuki Kusu left, Kisuke said in a low voice, with some confusion in his tone. However, it is best not to reach that step. What the hell is that monster? Looking at the monster-like Quincy opposite him, the team member of Gotei 13th trembled. Although his hand was holding Zanpakuto, this Zanpakuto, who could usually calm his mind, could not bring him any sense of security at this time. The arm holding the knife trembled uncontrollably. Our attack has no effect at all, but all the people who were pierced by his shining thorn are all dead. Another team member said with cold sweat on his face. His arms were also trembling slightly. Such an enemy was much more terrifying than Hollow. The unknown always gave people fear. And then why do people who slowly die constantly cry out in pain? Sha. His body unconsciously took a few steps back. Looking at the terrifying enemy approaching step by step, one of the team members finally could not suppress the fear in his heart and turned to run. Run! Run! This guy is not someone we can deal with. As the first person fled, more and more team members turned their heads and fled. Each and every one of them wished that they had 2 more legs than others. Don't be afraid. Don't run. Looking at the fleeing team members, Fujino Masayoshi shouted loudly. As the person in charge of the 6th Division, he was still a chief officer. At this time, it was time for the 13th Division to advance bravely. No matter what was said, they could not retreat. Even if they were to die, they had to die in battle. Our mission of the 13th Division is not to protect our own lives. Rather, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we have to protect Siriidii. No matter how much Fujino Masayoshi shouted, the team members around him still fled one by one. In the face of life and death, those people only cared about their own lives. As a chief officer, no one would listen to his orders. He was the only one left to face the approaching enemies. Do not retreat. Looking at the enemy who had come in front of him, Fujino Masayoshi closed his eyes in despair. He knew that with his strength, even if he rushed up, he would not be able to cause any damage to the enemy at all. It was even impossible for him to even touch the enemy's body. However, retreating without a fight was definitely not something he could do. Bang! The Quincy raised his arm, and a spike of light appeared in front of him. At this time, a slash fell from the sky and ruthlessly fell between the Quincy and the team member. Very good, very good. Ah, Vice Captain Abarai. Leave it to me next, you go quickly. While speaking, Renji's eyes stared at the Quincy below. The aura on the body is extremely terrible, just from Ryuryoku, it is absolutely not inferior to himself. Moreover, the means of attack are unknown, very strange. The cognition of this Quincy in front of him flashed in the eyes of Renji. The arm shook, and the Zabumaru in his hand directly cut off the head of the Quincy. The thin arm gently lifted, and the hand of the Quincy suddenly emerged a strange pattern. Only relying on a pair of meat palms, directly blocked the slash of Renji, and even flicked Renji's Zabumaru aside. The attack had no effect at all. Taking back his own Zanpakuto, Renji jumped down and his eyes noticed the lines on the back of the Quincy hand. This thing should be the blood vein, that Mr. Kimura said, in the face of my chop, it can actually be perfect defense. However, no matter what kind of defense it is, there should be a limit, so in the subsequent exchanges, my attack speed will increase by another level. I am 6th Division Vice Captain, Abarai Renji. What's your name, Quincy? In the face of Renji, the opposite Quincy stopped and looked at Shinigami opposite him. His eyes were calm, and he did not know what he was thinking about. As not. A low voice came, and without waiting for Renji to say anything, Quincy's arm was raised, and several shiny spikes suddenly appeared in his hand. With the swing of his arm, it flew toward Renji's body. With a flash of his feet, Renji suspended dodging, facing the unknown attack, he did not want to use his own body to test it. However, Death has Shuanpa, and Quincy also has Hirankyaku, which is not inferior to his Shuanpa in terms of movement, not to mention that the person who uses it is a person whose strength is even higher than Renji. Just as Renji's footsteps just fell, the whole body wrapped like a mummy, as Not had appeared in front of him, holding a shining spike in his hand, directly stabbing at Renji's body. The attack of Quincy is not limited to the bow and arrow, even if it is a close combat, it can be fought with a good color. Although he was caught by the enemy, there was no panic on Renji's face. The arm on the side was pulled, and the snake-tailed pill that had been released before suddenly retracted. The spikes on the tip of the blade emitted a faint cold light. If as Not stabbed the spikes in his hand into the body of Renji, Renji's Zanpakuto would also pierce his body. Only for a moment, as Not thought of his response. A light flashed under his feet, and his body directly appeared in the distance. The weapon in his hand was not stabbed after all. Unlike Soul Society who rushed to fight in a hurry, they had been preparing for 1,000 years for this battle. There were many good cards in their hands that could be used. There was no need to exchange injuries with Shinigami. Moreover, it wasn't like he didn't have any results. Pfft. A stream of blood suddenly spurted out from Renji's shoulder, and a short spike was inserted on his shoulder. Damn it! When looking at the wound on his shoulder, Renji's eyes flashed a trace of haze. When did the enemy attack? He did not notice at all. It seemed that there was a big gap between the two. The two hands opened slightly and made a hugging gesture. More than a dozen glowing spikes appeared in front of as Not, and the spearhead was facing Renji. Being aimed at by so many spikes, Renji's heart suddenly felt cold, and in a moment, a sense of fear rose in his heart. Shaking his head hard, shaking off the fear in his heart, Renji held Zanpakuto in his palm tight. Fear and what not, go to hell, this is war. In front of the enemy. Even if he had any emotions now, it could only be anger. Damn, is it poisoned? Feeling that his hands and feet were like frozen, Renji's heart could not help but think. You found out, right? Seemingly seeing through the thoughts in Renji's heart, as Not opened his mouth and said, his eyes were as deep as the lake water, so that people could not see the depth. Do you think that might be poison? No. This is actually something that you have forgotten a long time ago. His tone suddenly became high-pitched. As Not raised his arm and his fingers unconsciously danced. Think about it. Become stronger. After becoming a vice-captain, you will have to rely on the weapons in your hands to knock him down one by one. That should be the feeling you have forgotten for a long time, right? The most important feeling in life is. Speaking up to this point, as Not's originally high-spirited tone suddenly slowed down. His voice became a little low, and his eyes flashed with a kind of heart-palpitating brilliance. Fear. Fear. Hearing what the opposite Quincy said, Renji's eyes flashed slightly, and a very absurd feeling rose in his heart. Would he feel fear? It's really amazing. It's just a vice-captain, and he can bear it for so long. If it's just an ordinary Shinigami, as long as he is shot by my arrow, he will scream and go crazy because of fear, and then die because he can't bear the inner torment. Anyone who is shot by my arrow, all the feelings will become fear. At this time, if the enemy takes a step, will there be something fatal? If you hold the knife, or pull out the knife, hold it high. Or swing it down, when the enemy speaks to me, will he cast any terrible spells at the same time? If he moves his fingers, or moves his sight, or even breathing, anything will make you suspicious. You can't concentrate on thinking. But you can rely on your own will to persevere. It is really surprising. As Not looked at Renji, and his eyes showed obvious amazement. As a vice-captain, Renji could do such a degree, which really surprised him. If it was captain, he would naturally not be too surprised to do such a degree, but Renji was just a vice-captain, and he was a vice-captain with relatively shallow qualifications. However, that is only surprise, far less than fear. In the depths of your heart, it has been completely occupied by fear of me. Don't joke. How is it possible to fear that kind of thing? Before I kill all of you, Quincy, my heart will not have any extra emotions. Stepping on the ground, Renji's body rushed forward straight, and Zanpakuto in his hand threw it toward the head of Quincy. As I said, your slash is invalid for me. The arm was lifted, and the blood vein was launched in an instant. It was just a simple block, and as not directly blocked the attack of Renji, with the slash of Renji, it could not break through the defense of his blooded. Between the defense, a few light thorns appeared in front of his death note again, and quickly shot into Renji's body. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out, and Renji's body quickly retreated. Fear can be overcome by experience. The more accustomed the strong to fight, the easier it is to produce such an illusion. However, fear with a reason was nothing. It could be contained through willpower or experience. As long as there was a reason, as long as the source was cut off, the fear could be removed. However, there was no reason for true fear. Because it is not based on feelings, but on instinct. True fear. No reason, no boundaries. It is like a lot of insects crawling on the body, no one can get rid of instinct. With the low voice of as not, in a trance, Renji seemed to feel countless disgusting insects squirming on his body, the sticky touch, which was crazy. Ah! The mouth suddenly issued a furious howl. Although fear flashed in the eyes of Renji, Zanpakuto in his hand still waved out without hesitation, and ruthlessly swung toward the enemy in front of him. How many times do you want me to say it before you understand? Your slash is useless to me. How is it possible? There was a surprise in the tone of Ace Note. Looking at the wound left on his wrist, the surprise in his heart could not be concealed. The slash that should have been completely ineffective against him actually cut his own body. His slash could actually break through the defense of blood vein. Hoochie hoochie hoochie. Breathing heavily, Renji's eyes were full of blood, and the whole person looked a little ferocious. For people like me, fear will only make me more crazy. Shouting loudly, Renji waved his own Zanpakuto in his hand and waved it out. Sizzle. Another wound appeared on his Death Note's wrist. The defense of the blood vein was completely useless. Renji, who had fear in his heart, the power of the slash in his hand became more amazing. The power of each slash was much stronger than before. Every time he attacked, he could leave a wound on as Not's hand. This guy is like a mad dog. Although he is afraid in his heart, the fear aroused his fierceness. Although he was hit by Renji in succession, there was no panic expression on as Not's face. Even if he did break through his blood vein defense, Renji still had no way to cause more damage to him. Those small wounds were not important at all. However, if he is allowed to attack like this, even if it is me, it will be very troublesome. With such a thought flashing through his mind, the action of as Not suddenly became faster, his hands opened, and several light thorns appeared in front of him. The pink petals suddenly floated down from the air, and the dreamy scene made the movements of Renji's hands pause. But these dreamlike cherry blossoms made as Not's body unconsciously tense up. In his eyes, under the dream scenes of the falling cherry blossoms, what was hidden was the killing intent that made people palpitate. Dang dang. The cherry blossoms floated down and actually blocked all the light thorns of as Not. Retreat, Renji. A figure appeared in front of Renji at some point, holding Renji's Zanpakuto in his left hand and a hilt in his right hand. His tone was cold, but Renji's movement suddenly stopped. Leave the rest to me. The cool breeze blew. Kuchiki Byakuya was still expressionless, but there was a murderous look in the depths of his eyes. Kuchiki Byakuya. A pure white Captain Haori, a white and crystal star-shaped pliers on his head, silver wind gauze wrapped around his neck, and a handle in the hand of a white finger glove. With a cold expression on his face, and the killing intent in his eyes, Kuchiki Byakuya appeared in the middle of Renji and as Not, not caring about the possibility of being hurt by the two people. I thought you would not dare to come, Kuchiki Byakuya. Looking at Kuchiki Byakuya with a high and cold temperament, there was a trace of unknown meaning in his eyes. What reason do I have to not come? The tone of his mouth was extremely cold, even colder than usual. White's words seemed to freeze everything around him. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time that Renji saw his captain so angry. As if he did not feel the cold aura emitted from Byakuya, as not lifted his foot and walked forward as if he did not notice it. As soon as the arm was lifted, several wounds suddenly appeared on the arm of Asnat. Don't act rashly. Renji could barely break the blood vein, with all his strength, but it was not a problem at all in the hands of Byakuya. It was just a simple attack that broke the defense of the opposite side and hurt his body. Looking at the wounds on his hand, Asnat's eyes flashed a trace of surprise. Although he knew that with Kuchiki Byakuya's strength, it was inevitable to break the defense of his blood vein. After all, even Abarai Renji, who was his deputy captain, broke his own defense. However, never would he have thought that he would be able to break through his defense so easily. However, just this alone was not enough. He opened his hands and countless light thorns appeared in front of him. Each of them emitted a strong aura. Be careful, Captain. His attack will make people fear. Fear. There was no change in the mood on his face. Even the eyes did not change at all. Kuchiki Byakuya seemed to have not heard the reminder of Renji. He held Zanpakuto in his hand, his body forward, his arm waved, and the pink cherry blossoms all over the sky blew toward the opposite side. It seems that you don't believe it at all. Seeing Kuchiki Byakuya rushing to himself without any concealment, there was a glimmer of light in the eyes of Asnat. It was these people who did not believe that they would have feelings like fear. The stronger the person, the more confident he was and believed that he would not be afraid of anything. However, fear was irresistible. His eyes suddenly widened, and a trace of morbid excitement flashed in his eyes in an instant. Asnat waved his hands, and the light thorns in front of him all flew toward Kuchiki Byakuya's body. Puff. Sizzle. Countless tiny scars appeared on the body of Asnat. The power of Senbon Zakura was terrible. Even if there was no Bankai, the destructive power was still very considerable, and the number of attacks was absolutely desperate. In contrast, the two light thorns stabbed Kuchiki Byakuya's body, but under Kuchiki Byakuya's rich combat experience, all of them did not hit the fatal parts. Compared with the opposite Asnat, it was really a subtle injury that could be ignored. Hee. Although it seemed that he was at a disadvantage in the previous fight, but the mouth of Asnat let out a low laugh, not worried about the wound on his body at all. This guy. Looking at Asnat who was laughing opposite him, Kuchiki Byakuya's eyes showed a trace of caution. The principle of the system came to the latest chapter. If he had to say what he did not want to face the enemy the most, then he was undoubtedly a madman. Everything of that kind of enemy was unpredictable. No one knew what he would do in the next second of the battle. The battle with that kind of person would always have all kinds of changes. At this time, Asnat, who was injured but made a low laugh, was obviously such a madman in the eyes of Kuchiki Byakuya. However, no matter what kind of person the enemy was, the only thing he should do now was to kill him. Trample Soul Society's territory and trample on the dignity of Godai 13, this group of people is undoubtedly the biggest villain. Bursting a trace of uneasiness in his heart, Kuchiki Byakuya waved his knife forward. This is a life and death battle, and finally can only end with the death of one side. Damn, the captain was attacked by him. Seeing that Kuchiki Byakuya was hit by the light thorn of the other side in the confrontation, there was a flash of anxiety in his heart. Although he always had the greatest trust in the captain in his heart, the strange self of the enemy was personally experienced before. It evoked the fear hidden in the depths of his heart. This power was simply like a joke. Can the captain really resist it? Do you feel it? Your hands and feet feel like they are frozen. Seeing Kuchiki Byakuya's slightly flashing eyes, a glimmer of splendor flashed in Asnat's eyes. No, not poisoned, but fear. Fear again. Hearing the words of the other party, there was a flash of disdain in Renji's eyes. It was the same as what Renji said before, but how could fear work on himself? In this world, there is no battle without fear. However, that feeling has been overcome when I crossed the boundaries of countless life and death so far. I never suppressed the psychology of fear, but accepted fear in battle, and after crushing it, I constantly gained the strength to move forward. The face remained unchanged, and Kuchiki Byakuya held Zanpakuto in his arm without trembling. A mere fear had no meaning for himself. What a proud guy, are all Shinigami as stubborn as you? Whether it is you or the previous vice-captain, all of them think that they can overcome fear by relying on their own experience and willpower. They are really a bunch of ignorant guys. I thought that you had already understood my ability when you were hiding on the side. Then let me say it to you again. He stopped and looked at Kuchiki Byakuya with a hint of expectation in his eyes. Asnat was faintly expecting in his heart, expecting this person who gave a very high evaluation of the organization to bring him a surprise. The fear with reason is nothing, it can indeed be overcome by experience and willpower. However, there is no reason for real fear. Because it is not based on feelings, but on instinct, just like what you see now. With the explanation of Asnat on the opposite side, Kuchiki Byakuya's body suddenly stopped, and he seemed to see Rukia turning from a beautiful woman into a white bone. His Anna died in front of him with pain. He let out a painful howl, and with great perseverance, he suppressed the various thoughts in his heart that made him faintly afraid. Zanpakuto in Byakuya's hand waved, and the pink cherry blossom with a sad killing intent rushed to the body of Asnat. Your heart is already in chaos. With a movement of his feet, his body easily appeared in the distance. Ace Note looked at Kuchiki Byakuya who had lost his mind and whispered. Although he was injured because of Byakuya's attack just now, but Asnat was not worried at all. He was injured now, but Kuchiki Byakuya's situation was not better than him, even more dangerous, because his heart had been shaken, and the sword in his hand could no longer be as resolute as before. You should understand that you can't win against me in your current state without Bankai. Looking at Kuchiki Byakuya opposite, Asnat spat out this sentence. After hearing his words, Kuchiki Byakuya's body suddenly became stable, and the mind that had been in disorder suddenly calmed down. Is this your purpose? Lure us through battle, wait for our captain to use Bankai, and then seize it, so that you can easily wound Soul Society. I really did not expect that you have already known about this. Hearing Kuchiki Byakuya's words, Asnat's pupils contracted slightly. What happened now was beyond his expectation. The war had just begun, how did the enemy know this information? No wonder even if he fought so hard, he firmly did not use Bankai. It's a pity that we already know your depth, so before we find the corresponding means to restrain, we will never use Bankai. As long as the captain still has combat power, you will unconsciously have more scruples. The current battle has become a battle of time. Let's see if you destroy Soul Society first or we find the means to restrain. Then kill you with Bankai. Pa. It is really worthy of being the head of the four nobles of Soul Society, the head of the Kuchiki family. This analysis is really clear. Suddenly reaching out and clapping his hands, he opened his mouth to praise Kuchiki Byakuya's analysis, but there was no praise in the tone of Asnat. However, since you know that we can seize your Bankai, I don't know if you have heard of the ultimate move of ours. Hearing Asnat's words, Kuchiki Byakuya's face changed greatly and he could no longer keep calm. According to the previous information, the final move that Quincy had is, Volstandig. Thinking of such a situation, Kuchiki Byakuya's face became more and more determined. He had a reason to never lose, so, even if he risked his life, he absolutely could not fall. Damn it! Looking at the enemy in front of him, Hitsugaya clenched his teeth. He was still too weak. What? Are you going to give up just like that? The youth looked at the opposite of him, without any emotion on his face, and raised his arm. A sharp claw made of metal was held in his hand. It was the sharp claw which had troubled him a lot in the previous battle. The sharpness of the claw was no less than that of Zanpakuto, and the combat experience of the other side was also above him. It was really a hard battle. Then, it's my turn to attack. As soon as he finished speaking, his opponent's body flashed and he suddenly disappeared from Hitsugaya's line of sight. Hirenkyaku. Hitsugaya didn't need to think too much about the reaction he had gotten from countless battles. The possible attack routes of his opponent naturally flashed through his mind. He waved his hand, and several sharp ice cubes flew out along with Zanpakuto. Group of birds icicles. Do you still not understand? Your level of ice is useless against me. Have you not seen what happened before? There was no intention of resisting Hitsugaya's attack at all. As he spoke indifferently, his body directly resisted Hitsugaya's attack and appeared in front of him. The sharp claws in his hand suddenly swung out. Dang! Hisugaya raised Zanpakuto in his arm and blocked the enemy's attack. At the same time, he used his other hand to press against the back of the knife. Hitsugaya's face showed a bit of difficulty. In the case that his ability was useless, the disadvantage of his body size could not be avoided. In the face of an enemy, his height always made him lower. In this state, it was not conducive to the use of strength. Humph! With a cold snort, Tsangdu moved his feet and kicked Hitsugaya's body away. Damn it! After quickly adjusting his body and stabilizing his body, Hitsugaya held his Zanpakuto with both hands, and his whole body was concentrated in an instant. Taking a deep breath, a bright light suddenly burst out in his eyes. Hitsugaya stepped on the ground and rushed forward. Your attack is useless to me. I am the eye of their stern ritter, Tsangdu the Iron. Looking at Hitsugaya's attack, a trace of disapproval flashed on his face. As Tsangdu, his body is not injured by ordinary people, so even if his attack ability is not outstanding in Stern Ritter, there are still few people who can beat him in a frontal battle. After all, just by relying on his body that could not be injured, he was already in an invincible position. As he turned a deaf ear to Tsangdu's words, the divine light in Hitsugaya's eyes was restrained. His eyes were filled with determination as he looked at Tsangdu as Zanpakuto waved his hand, a dazzling blade light suddenly slashed down from his Zanpakuto. Puff! A wound appeared on Tsangdu's body, and blood sprayed out. The bright red blood reflected Tsangdu's face that was full of disbelief. How could you? Feeling his body that had been cut open, Tsangdu still looked incredulous. After all, his body was like steel, and it was actually cut open by someone. It seems that this move taught by Senior Kimura is quite effective. Turning around and looking at the wound on Tsangdu's chest, Hitsugaya's eyes flashed with a trace of splendor. It seemed that Kimura's strength far surpassed his predictions. His cutting technique had probably already reached an unimaginable level. However, Soul Society's current situation was really not good. It would be great if they could provide support. Sensing that Ryuryoku was colliding everywhere inside Soul Society, Hitsugaya frowned. Bang! 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 Oh! Bang! Damn it, is this guy a devil? Looking at the Quincy who was wantonly destroying in front of them, Shinigami's eyes were full of undisguised fear. Black hair, a beautiful face, and a hot figure. After wearing the uniform of Quincy, it was even more attractive, but the means of the Quincy in front of them made Shinigami tremble. It was the seemingly cute girl opposite him. In just a few minutes, she killed most of Shinigami, and countless members died in her hands. Ha ha ha. With a bright smile on her face, and a little excitement in her eyes, she looked like a girl who got an interesting toy, but the smile on her face was no different from a demon in the eyes of the surrounding Shinigami. Compared with them, the girl in front of her was more like a demanding Shinigami. Every time the short saber in her hand swung out, it would take away a few lives. Moreover, every person who died a tragic death was blown into pieces. The surroundings of the young girl were already covered with countless broken limbs and wreckage. Pa! A large hand suddenly stretched out from the side and firmly grabbed the young girl's wrist, stopping the attack she was about to attack. Even a young girl like you is a soldier of the Quincy. Looking at the Quincy in front of him who looked like an innocent girl, Kamamura Sajin's eyes flashed with a hint of heaviness. The team members who were killed around them were all the team members of their 7th division, all of whom were his loyal subordinates. Even a little dog like you can be a captain. It seems that Soul Society's hands are severely lacking. The corner of her eyes slightly glanced at the hand holding her wrist. The cold light flashed in the eyes of Bambietta and then her eyes fell on the body of Kamamura Sajin. The corners of her mouth were slightly hooked, and her eyes flashed with an interesting look. Bang! A burst of explosion suddenly erupted from where the two people came into contact. Kamamura Sajin's body hurriedly retreated. Looking at his palm that was injured by the explosion, his eyes revealed a trace of caution. Bang! A corpse slammed into the wall. It pierced through the wall. He really can't take a hit. A huge body approached from afar. The burly figure was almost 3 meters tall. There was a thick iron chain wrapped around his waist. His thick facial features and the thick beard on his face added a bit of a valiant aura to him. It's all to deal with weaklings like this. It makes me very tired. Looking at the gradually approaching Quincy, the face of the executioner flashed a trace of seriousness, but there was a deep worry under that seriousness. These enemies that appeared now, each of them had strength comparable to Captain, but Soul Society side, because of the other party's ability to take away Captain's Bankai, did not dare to fight with full strength. In this case, Soul Society's current situation was very bad. Cut it out, Kazushini. In a low voice, the spirit of words came out, and 2 double-edged sickles connected by a chain suddenly appeared in his hand. Even if he doesn't like his Zanpakuto, he will not hesitate at all in the face of the life-or-death juncture of the Soul Society. Now the primary consideration is how to save his life under the attack of the enemy and defeat the enemy. Oh, it seems that I finally met a good person. You should be the vice-captain. Although it is a little worse than my expectation, it is also good. He reached out and stroked his hair back, then twisted his neck, and a hint of tyranny flashed in the eyes of the Quincy. I am Driscoll Bursey, of the Star-Crossed Knights, the Overkill. As long as I constantly kill the enemy, my strength will constantly become stronger. On the way here, I have killed hundreds of people. It will be better to kill you again. Bastard! Hearing what the Quincy master opposite said, Shei Hisage's eyes suddenly turned red. The people who died were his subordinates. Some of them are even friends who he have known since he was a student. They were all killed by this guy. The rage in his heart burned fiercely, waves of anger rushed into his heart, making him want to tear the enemy in front of him into pieces. Looks like the people I killed have a close relationship with you. Noticing the change in the mood of Shei Hisage, a trace of interest flashed through Driscoll's eyes. He took out a long light spear in his hand, emitting a strong spirit particle fluctuation, making Shei Hisage opposite him nervous. In that case, let me send you to reunite. The light spear in his hand suddenly shot out, emitting a terrifying fluctuation. Driscoll was right. After killing hundreds of Shinigami team members, his strength had increased by more than a little. Bang! Bang! Shei Hisage raised his Zanpakuto and pushed the opponent's attack to the side. However, Shei Hisage's expression became very ugly. Although he had blocked the first wave of attacks from the enemy, through the exchange just now, he had already felt that there was still a huge gap between him and the enemy with his current level. It seems that you have also felt it. There is a huge gap in strength between us like a chasm. Being keenly aware of the change in Shei Hisage's mood in an instant, Driscoll spoke to strike his confidence. However, a mere vice-captain, even if he loses to me, it is nothing. However, I originally thought that there would be a good opponent. Who knew that such a weak guy would be so boring? In that case, I will deal with you next. He took out a long spear from the ring guard on the back of his hand. Compared to the previous one, the shape of the flying spear this time was much more complete. There were even some detailed patterns on it. Looking at the weapon made of spirit particles, this was already very amazing. Sensing the terrifying fluctuations coming from the flying spear, the expression of Shei Hisage changed greatly. This level was not inferior to that of Espada in the previous battle. He absolutely could not resist it. Was he going to die just like that? Looking at the spear that was flying towards him, a trace of despair flashed through Shei Hisage's eyes. Boom! A figure suddenly fell from the sky and fiercely stomped on the ground. His body twisted and he stretched out his left hand. Just by relying on one arm, he actually caught the opponent's attack. Under the astonished gazes of Shei Hisage and Driscoll, he bounced it in another direction. This is... Looking at this familiar figure in front of him, a glimmer of light suddenly flashed through Shei Hisage's eyes. Kurosaki Ichigo. He had actually arrived at such an urgent moment. With him joining in, the current situation would definitely improve greatly. Kurosaki Ichigo. Looking at the blonde youth in front of him, Driscoll was slightly stunned. Then, he suddenly opened his mouth and said with a proud smile on his face, "Aya, my luck is really too good. Kurosaki Ichigo, the first of the 5 special combat powers, this is the enemy I'm looking forward to. Ha 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 ha. If I can kill you, not only is it an incomparable military service, but even my strength will rise greatly because of killing you." Looking at the opposite Quincy who was laughing wildly, Ichigo's eyes were full of gloom. Although he had heard from Kisuke Urahara that Soul Society was now being invaded by Quincy, he did not expect that in such a short time, Soul Society had been ravaged by this group of people. There were broken houses everywhere, and the bodies of the team members scattered everywhere. The entire Soul Society was full of turmoil of Ryuryoku, and there were Ryuryoku's collisions everywhere, as well as the mourning soul inheritor of the team before death. Bastard! The Zanpakuto in his hand was tightly held. The anger in Kurosaki Ichigo's heart could not be suppressed, and there was no need to suppress it. For this group of enemies who unscrupulously destroyed Soul Society, there was nothing to say. They were even worse thugs than Aizen. What he could do now was to defeat the enemy with the sword in his hand and protect Soul Society. "I will never let you go." With deep anger on his face, Kurosaki Ichigo moved his feet and his body instantly appeared in front of Driscoll. Zanpakuto in his hand chopped down. Boom! The blue Ryuryoku overflowed, and the huge slash completely drowned the enemy's body. With a backhand put the Zanpakuto in his hand on the ground, Kurosaki Ichigo closed his eyes and felt Ryuryoku in Soul Society. Fortunately, Rukia and others are all fine. Boom! A powerful Ryuryoku suddenly exploded in front of him, attracting Ichigo's attention. He's actually still alive. Feeling the powerful Ryuryoku in front of him, Ichigo's face revealed a shocked expression. He had attacked with hatred just now, but the other party was still able to fight after being caught unprepared by his Getsuga Tensho. The enemy was indeed not simple, as expected of someone who could destroy Soul Society to such a degree. "You are really a powerful guy. If I kill you, my strength will be much stronger." The smoke dissipated, revealing the figure of the Quincy. However, behind the Quincy at this time, a pair of wings made of rasure slightly opened, from the wings, emitting a strong rasure fluctuation. Under that fluctuation, even the surrounding buildings were affected. Ichigo could even see a part of the buildings broken down into rasure. What is going on? In the legend of the modern world, such wings should belong to angels, but at this moment, what appeared in front of Kurosaki Ichigo was completely the existence of demons. This is the Volstandig. Hearing the name mentioned by the other party, Kurosaki Ichigo's pupils contracted slightly. This was not the first time he had heard of such a name, and he had heard of it before. If it is you, you are indeed qualified to let me use Volstandig. However, you will die obediently, and I will accept this credit. He stretched out his arm, and a long spear made of rasure suddenly appeared in the hands of Driscoll. Feeling the spiritual fluctuation on it that was very different from before, the face of the Shuhei Hisagi was greatly changed. Be careful, Kurosaki Ichigo. It's too late. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Driscoll swung his arm, and the spear in his hand suddenly stabbed out. The surrounding air suddenly became hot. The speed of his thrust was so fast that it almost made the surrounding air burn. Eyes focused, Kurosaki Ichigo lowered his body. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed Zanpakuto, who was inserted into the ground. He clenched his hands tightly, and a powerful Ryoryoku burst out from his body. Zanpakuto pulled up from the bottom up, and the blue Ryoryoku was like water. Boom! A violent shockwave suddenly erupted, and waves of air pushed away the Shuhei Hisagi who was standing to the side. What a powerful and monstrous reading! Holding his hand in front of him, Shuhei Hisagi's eyes were filled with shock. He already knew that Shinigami, acting as Kurosaki Ichigo, was powerful enough to match the captain. However, only when he truly fought with him would he know how strong he was. First Division. This Ryoryoku is. Yamamoto Genryusai suddenly turned to look at a direction and his eyes narrowed. Second Division sent intelligence, Shinigami agent Kurosaki Ichigo has arrived at Soul Society and is now fighting with Quincy. Little devil. Although his mouth was disdainful, Sasuke, who was standing on the side, noticed that the hand of the head captain holding the crutch loosened a little. Although he was dissatisfied that Soul Society's dangerous situation actually needed a human teenager to rescue, the head captain also knew that in the current situation, it was a lucky thing to increase the combat power of a captain level. With only Kurosaki Ichigo alone, their side could lose at least hundreds of ordinary players. How's Captain Kuratsuchi doing? No reply. Where's Kisuke? No reply as well. Head captain lowered his eyes and could not see any emotions, but Sasuke could clearly feel it. At this time, the anxiety in head captain's heart was very weak, but head captain was indeed anxious about Soul Society's current situation. Such emotions would never appear on head captain in the past. However, there is a message from Hueco Mundo. Hearing Sasuke's next words, Yamamoto head captain's eyes suddenly widened, and a slight change of emotion appeared on his face. Muyang applied to allow him to take Arrancar Haribel, and the former Soul Society traitor Ikemara Jin to go through the gate of Siriidii to help the battle. His face returned to its previous calm, and head captain slowly closed his eyes. I'll allow it. Seeing that head captain's aura had returned to calm, a hint of relaxation flashed in his eyes. He reached out and gestured to the communicator behind him. As long as he added 3 more powerful forces, Soul Society would be safe. Hueco Mundo. I really didn't expect that even this body was created by imagination. So, your original body is just a brain. Looking at the head on the ground in front of him, Muyang's tone was a little emotional. Imagination, what a terrible ability. Could it be that all Quincy were all such interesting guys? Hey, no matter what, Kimura, the one you just defeat now is too outrageous. Ikemara Jin came over and casually glanced at the head on the ground. He waved his hands and said to Muyang in a strange tone. Is that so? There might be something even more ridiculous. To Ikemara Jin's words, Muyang waved his arm and a crack appeared beside them. Let's go, Soul Society still has someone waiting for us. So that's how it is. He let out a soft sigh, and a smile suddenly appeared on Kisuke's face. Although he had two large dark circles under his eyes, it could not hide the elegance in his eyes at all. Is the research done? Seeing the expression on Kisuke's face, Yoruchi was slightly stunned, and then asked with some joy. Well, what we have to do next is to deliver these things to the captains. I'll go. No. There are some other things must be done by you. Then what you said is. It's me. As the voice fell, several figures appeared in the Urahara shop. Sorry for the inconvenience, Miss Kusu, and Mr. Stark. What do you mean? Did you miss us? Hiyori rubbed his nose in dissatisfaction and raised his head to question Kisuke. Because, there are important things that need your help to investigate, Hiyori-chan, these are some of the more interesting things. You can find anyone you want in that kind of thing. Why do you have to find me? Because in my impression, this is something only you can do. Bang! He kicked Kisuke hard on the leg, and Hiyori's face turned slightly red, looking proud and delicate. Don't always use such an excuse to make me do things. Bastard! Tell me, what is it? Idiot! Idiot! Hiyori is actually shy. What a straightforward personality. Seeing Hiyori's reaction. Lisa and Love, who came with several people, began to complain one by one. Well, because Hiyori-chan and others have something to help with, this time only Miss Nan and Mr. Stark can go to Soul Society this time. How about it? Can you? Of course it's okay. Suzuki Kusu's face showed a faint smile. I have no problem. Although it is very troublesome, the last time I was beaten so badly. If I can't return it, Lillinette will never forgive me. He reached out and rubbed his head, making his hair a mess. Although Stark still looked listless, it can be seen from his eyes that he has been serious. This war is extraordinary. Then I am relieved. With the two of you and Kimura who rushed to Soul Society from Hueco Mundo, Soul Society should be able to survive this time. Kimura also went. That is great. It seems that I can relax a little. Hearing the news from Kisuke's mouth, Stark's face became more relaxed. This thing is what I developed, something that can help Shinigami take back Bankai. Take back Bankai? Hearing Kisuke's words, Suzuki Kusu's face was slightly moved. As Shinigami's strongest means of Bankai, it was actually seized by the Quincy in the battle. Such a battle was too passive, and it was because he was afraid that Bankai would be taken away. So at this time, the war will fall into such a level. Soul Society's side is completely at a disadvantage in the battle. After all, the enemy is not a target that can be defeated without needing Bankai. And now, Kisuke has developed a method to take back Bankai. As long as it is confirmed to be feasible, the captains can use Bankai to change the disadvantage in the current battle. Exactly. After the previous research, I understand the weakness of Quincy to seize the principle of Bankai, and then use that weakness to stop the plunder of Bankai, and then retrieve the seized Bankai. He reached out and pointed to a pile of black pills on the table over there, and Kisuke's face flashed with wisdom. This is the Shadow Potion, something that can completely stop them stealing your Bankai. You should also know that Arrancar's resurrection is to release the soul power that is suppressed into the shape of a blade to obtain a huge power. Bankai can be said to be almost the same form of ability as them. If you can seize Captain's Bankai, you should also be able to seize Arrancar's resurrection. However, none of Arrancar's resurrection was taken away. It is impossible for the Quincy to not be interested in Arrancar. In fact, they have captured a lot of Arrancar as military force. These are what you saw in Hueco Mundo. They also want Arrancar's power as combat force. Knowing this, but not seizing the resurrection, there are two reasons to see. The resurrection cannot be seized, or the resurrection will be detrimental to the Quincy. Suzuki Kusu took a deep breath, took Kisuke's words, and her eyes flashed. Yes. Glancing at Suzuki Kusu and expressing affirmation of her words, Kisuke then said, according to the relevant research of Hollow, it is impossible to deduce the reason that can seize Bankai but cannot seize the resurrection. In this case, it is better to think that it is not conducive to Quincy. Kuratsuchi Captain once told me that he has always been concerned about one thing about Quincy. That is, the extreme hostility of Quincy to Hollow, is not like what they say, it is because of resentment. The so-called hostility is because of different thoughts. It is impossible to continue to hate the object of no will and thought. There is only one reason for endless hostility. That is the fear from the bottom of the heart for the object that will bring life danger. The fear of Quincy against Hollow. Yes. Looking at the disbelief on the faces of the people in front of him, Kisuke's face did not change, and then said, the so-called Quincy is a race that has no resistance to the Hollow at all. Everything of the Hollow is poison for the Quincy. After being eroded by the Hollow, not only will the Ryatsu weaken, but the soul will collapse, resulting in death. There is no way to go to the hollowification like Shinigami. Because of this, if you can absorb some Hollow strength, and treat the Bankai as hollowification only for a moment, the Bankai will become poison for the Quincy. How do I use this? Just touch it with your body. Without any hesitation, Suzuki Kusu reached out to the pill. A strange power was immediately absorbed from her finger into her body. Pa! With a crisp sound, a crack suddenly appeared on the disc that absorbed Suzuki Kusu's Bankai. A familiar feeling welled up in Suzuki Kusu's heart. With a gentle smile on her face, she stroked her own Zanpakuto. A very different feeling rose in Suzuki Kusu's heart. It was clearly just a period of time away from his own Zanpakuto, but it seemed to be a century apart. Moreover, she seemed to have a new understanding of her ability. It seems that there is no problem. How about it, Mr. Akon, did you hear our words clearly? All heard. Then, can I ask for your help? Of course, this is a big matter that concerns the entire Soul Society. Now that Captain is not here, I can be fully responsible. However, before that, can I ask a question first? Please speak. The things you developed are based on the fact that Captain need to use Hollow strength in the instant of Bankai, so as to avoid it being taken away. Then can I think that Kurosaki Ichigo, who has Hollow strength, and the captains of the 3rd, 5th, and 9th Division, can now use Bankai and will not be taken by the enemy? Of course. Lock on all the positions of the captain and the vice-captain, get rid of the rest of the modified insects. Immediately prepare for Tenkura, convey the news to all the captain and vice-captain level that we have found a way to prevent the Bankai from being taken away. Kurosaki Ichigo and the 3 captain who can use hollowification can use their Bankai normally. Also, Muyang is coming to Soul Society from Hueco Mundo with Ikamaru Jin and Arankar Harabel from Hueco Mundo. In Human World, Suzuki Kusu and Arankar Stark are coming. They have pills that can prevent Bankai from being taken. In various places of Soul Society, the captains who were fighting were slightly stunned, and then a smile appeared on their faces. Can you use Bankai directly? Reaching out, he tore off his torn clothes. Kurosaki Ichigo wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and showed a smile on his face. Bankai. Oh, the prelude to counterattack is playing. Feeling the sudden burst of Ryuryoku, Kyoraku Shunsui tilted his head and said. Do you really think that way? Fight back. On the other side of the spring water, a Quincy said with a calm face. Even if he knew that Shinigami could use Bankai, he did not panic at all, as if it was an insignificant thing. Oh, I almost forgot that your Quincy also has the ability to compete with Shinigami's Bankai. If I remember correctly, it is called Volstandig, right? It seems that you know quite a lot. I wonder which bad-mouthed guy leaked the news. He had short white hair, a beard, and a pair of square eyes on his face. He was wearing a button coat with a tie inside. Although his face was slightly old, the aura he exuded could not be underestimated. Moreover, Kyoraku Shunsui knew that such a guy must have extremely rich combat experience, which was very difficult to deal with. However, even if you know more, it will not have any effect on the final result. The result of this battle, at the beginning, is already doomed. You Shinigami will eventually withdraw from the stage of history. Suddenly raising his hand, the white pistol in his hand shot out a ray of racier light, and a Godei 13th Division member in the distance died on the spot. If I am not wrong, this Shinigami is here to send you pills to prevent Bankai from being stolen. Yes, but your reaction is really fast. You really sacrificed the lives of your team members in vain. What a pity. What? In your eyes, is such a reaction already fast? As soon as the voice fell, the old Quincy eyes suddenly flashed a glimmer of light. Kyoraku Shunsui only felt the front of his eyes flash, and the figure of Quincy had already swayed behind him. Kyoraku Shunsui moved his feet, his body suddenly twisted, his arm swung, and Zanpakuto in his hand waved back. A trace of racier light flashed under his feet, and the body of Quincy instantly went around. Kyoraku Shunsui wiped his clothes, and the figure of the other side appeared in front of Kyoraku Shunsui again. Oh, I thought I could attack, I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Holding Zanpakuto in his hand, Kyoraku Shunsui's old face showed a trace of helplessness. He did not expect that the war had just begun. He met such a troublesome guy, really can't make people happy. Is that so? The corner of his mouth was slightly pulled up. Quincy seemed to want to make some expression, but in the end, he just spat out 2 words, then his feet moved, and his body disappeared from Kyoraku Shunsui's sight again. It's not okay to always play a routine, Mr. Quincy. Although he said this, his tone was slightly contemptuous, but there was no relaxation in Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes. As a master who has been through hundreds of battles, he will never make such a mistake. Under his action, there must be a deeper intention. Step back, wave the blade, keep up, and wave the blade again. While dealing with the opposite Quincy, Kyoraku Shunsui was on guard in his heart, and at the same time divided a part of his mind to sense the situation in the court. Now, not only Kurosaki Ichigo, but even the captain of the 3rd, 5th, and 9th Division can also use Bankai, which is absolutely a great excitement for Soul Society. After another round, the eyes of Quincy suddenly flashed a glimmer of light. The light under his feet flashed, and the speed increased several times in an instant. And the figure constantly flashed, even with the eyesight of Kyoraku Shunsui. For a moment, he could not accurately grasp the movements of the other party. His head suddenly cooled, and an extremely dangerous feeling appeared in Kyoraku Shunsui's mind. Kyoraku Shunsui felt bad, his feet moved, his body turned, but the sense of danger lingered in his heart. Grimonil, God step. Bang! The pistol in the hand of the Quincy shot at Kyoraku Shunsui's head. Irony, white. The corner of his eyes swept a touch of white, and Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes flashed with a trace of wisdom. As he whispered, he suddenly waved the Kaiten Kayakatsu in his hand. A drop of bright red blood dripped from Kyoraku Shunsui's earlobe. Although he tilted his head at the last moment, the enemy's attack still grazed his ear, leaving a scar on his body. Puff! A clear wound appeared on Quincy's chest and abdomen, and blood kept spurting out from his wound. Holding his abdomen with one hand, blood kept dripping from between his fingers. The Quincy left Kyoraku Shunsui far away, looking at the other party with a trace of hidden fear. Oh, it is really surprising. Is this realization of your fear, Quincy? Looking coldly at the opposite Quincy, Kyoraku Shunsui said, completely different from his smiling face, there is no smile in his eyes, completely indifferent. This is war. You should have known it clearly when you began to act. Since it is war, there is bound to be someone to sacrifice, and this person may be anyone, naturally it is you and me. If you do not have the consciousness of facing death, it is better not to join the battlefield at the beginning. The consciousness of death. That kind of thing, I have long had it. It seemed that he wanted to hide the uneasiness in his heart, but Quincy lost his composure and shouted. The roaring posture formed a sharp contrast with his stiff clothes. Hee hee. Kyoraku Shunsui chuckled, seemingly dismissive of the reaction of the other party, but he put his attention on the pair of light wings behind the other party. It was a pair of wings made of ratio, emitting violent ratio fluctuations. It was also because of the appearance of the pair of wings that the other party's speed was greatly enhanced in an instant. This must be the so-called Vollständig. Although it was a question, Kyoraku Shunsui's tone was very sure, apparently recognizing the move used by the opposite Quincy. Yes. Oh, speaking of which, after fighting for so long, I have not yet introduced myself. It is rude, so I will go first. With a little smile on his face, Kyoraku Shunsui looked at the opposite Quincy. Godei 13, 8th Division Captain, Kyoraku Shunsui. Stern Ritter, Robert Acutron. Robert, is it? Then, it is your turn to say a color. Ha ha ha, what a fool. Knowing that we can seize Bankai, and even dare to carry out Bankai. In this case, I will not be polite to accept your Bankai. There was a brutal smile on his face. Driscoll took out a metal plate from his waist, and a black mass suddenly appeared and wrapped Kurosaki Ichigo's body. Pa! What is going on? Looking at the black curtain in front of him, Driscoll's face flashed a trace of disbelief. Why couldn't he seize Kurosaki Ichigo's Bankai? Do you think I will be brainless enough to know that it will be seized, yet I still use Bankai? You cannot control it. Kurosaki Ichigo's body suddenly appeared in front of Driscoll. A black trench coat made a rustling sound in the wind. His cold face was full of determination. His hands tightly grabbed his Zanpakuto. A black Ryuryoku wrapped around his Zanpakuto, and the surging Ryuryoku made Driscoll change color. Getsuga Tensho. Zanpakuto suddenly waved his hand, and a powerful slash came down on Driscoll. The black crescent moon seemed to split the whole world in half. The soaring Ryuryoku made everyone in the Siriitii look at him. TSK Ichigo really likes to show off. Hirako Shinji slightly turned his head and looked at Ryuryoku, who was rushing into the sky. He smiled, seemingly pleased and helpless. Let's hurry up too, Hinamori. Otherwise, the limelight will be stolen by someone else. After speaking to Lieutenant Hinamori Momo behind him, Hirako Shinji suddenly accelerated his pace and rushed in one direction. There was a powerful Ryatsu that was wreaking havoc, and there was even a violent explosion. Standing with his sword in hand, looking at the body of the Quincy who had been cut in two in front of him, Ichigo's eyes flashed a trace of forbearance. Even if he was in an enemy position, for each person, he always had a trace of kindness in his heart. However, when his eyes swept across the ruins around him, the trace of kindness in Ichigo's heart was immediately wiped away by him. He could not forgive this group of Quincy who ravaged Soul Society like this and caused countless deaths of Shinigami. Boom! A pillar of flame suddenly came from the distant building. Ichigo's face changed, and the flame light column flashed past his face, and the hot flame almost ignited his hair. His eyes flashed, and he looked at the opposite side. A figure stood tall on a wall. The Quincy with his hands in his pockets looked down at Ichigo with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Huh, it's Kurosaki Ichigo. I'm really lucky. He stretched out a finger to aim at Kurosaki Ichigo and made a shooting posture. The Quincy's mouth rose, and his face showed an arrogant expression. However, you won't be so lucky the next time. The eyes were cold, and the stretched fingers suddenly became hotter. Traces of flames came out of the fingertips of Quincy, emitting a terrible temperature, and the air around his fingers seemed to be affected by the high temperature, showing a strange distortion. Flaming Finger, 1. As the voice fell, a blazing flame shot out from the fingertips of Quincy, which was the same as the flame that was shot before. A trace of determination flashed across his face. Kurosaki Ichigo's body did not dodge. He raised Zanpakuto in his hand and waved his knife. He suddenly hit the opponent's attack. Boom! The flames scattered and splashed on the ground. The broken wall that burned Soul Society was burned. It made a bang sound. Ichigo looked coldly at the opposite Quincy. His heart gradually sank. The guy who was killed before was not a problem. It could only be said that he barely reached the level of the captain. It was not difficult for him to defeat him. But the guy in front of him now, although just a tentative fight, his strength was definitely not weaker than any captain. As expected, it is one of the 5 special combat powers mentioned by His Majesty. It can easily block my flaming fire finger, not too shabby, Kurosaki Ichigo. Jumping down from the wall, his feet flashed, and Quincy body appeared in front of Kurosaki Ichigo. He pointed to his head, and the tone of Quincy was as arrogant as ever. Stern Ritter, the heat, Baz B. As he spoke, Baz B stretched out 2 fingers of his right hand. Since the opponent is you, in order to show respect to you, let me use this to deal with you. Flaming Finger, 2. Getsuga Tensho. Boom. Boom. Yes, do you really think you can withstand my attack? Puppy dog. Bambietta waved her hand. She looked at the left side of Kamamura on the opposite side. There was a group of Shinigami lying around them. They were the soldiers who had been affected in the previous battle. They were either dead or seriously injured. His entire body was covered in wounds, but the eyes of Sajin Kamamura were full of determination. His expression did not waver at all. This was a war that concerned the survival of the entire Soul Society. His own life was not important at all. It's really unbearable. Looking at the opposite side of Kamamura, Bambietta was a little helpless. Such a cute puppy was really a little reluctant to kill, but why was he so reckless? Tenjin. A huge slash fell from the sky, striking the body of Bambietta. No matter what, you won't listen. Your attack is too heavy, just like your body. As she said this helplessly, Bambietta waved her hand, and a spirit wave shot up. Boom! The instant the wave of spirit particles shot out from Bambietta collided with the attack from Kamamura, a violent explosion erupted. Waves of air rose up, blowing away the reckless Shinigami on the ground and rolling him to the side. Puff! There was a stuffy feeling in his chest, and Kamamura spat out another mouthful of blood. Although his face was still calm, his spirit was inevitably exhausted. I already told you, I am the Stern Ritter, the explode, Bambietta Basterbine. You can't defend against my explosion. Because it's not that the thing I send out will explode, but the thing that comes into contact with my spirit particles will become a bomb. She looked at Kamamura in front of her with a smile on his face. He seemed to enjoy this kind of battle. Every time she saw the enemy being helpless under her ability, she would feel an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Attacking Soul Society, trampling on the dignity of the 13th Division. Even if I have to risk my life, I will defeat you. After receiving the Bankai medicine, there was no relief on Kamamura's face. Although he can indeed use the Bankai now, but after the battle just now, he has learned that the enemy he is facing is by no means a character that can be easily defeated, and the opponent's ability has a great impact on his Bankai. However, even if we know we are no match for them, we must do our best to keep the enemy here. This is the spirit of the Godii 13. There was a flash of determination on his face, and the long sword in the left hand of Kamamura waved, and Ryoryoku quickly improved. Bankai. Boom! Before he could use his own Zanpakuto Bankai, a crack suddenly appeared in the air of Soul Society, 2 figures flashed out from inside, and at the same time, a blue attack suddenly shot out and bombarded the body of Bambietta. This fluctuation is zero. Feeling the fluctuation of Ryoryoku, who was different from Shinigami and Quincy, the face of the Sajin Kamamura changed slightly and suddenly turned his head. Attacking a woman really doesn't fit my character. Following a lazy voice, a figure descended from the sky. Stark held a short gun in each hand, reached out and rubbed his head, slightly distressed. So what if she's a woman? Don't you often attack me? A tender voice came from the gun in Stark's hand. Lilynette. You are just a kid, not a woman. Bang. The gun in his hand was uncontrollably smashed on his head, and Stark suddenly shouted again. Captain Kamamura, I think you can leave her to us. Suzuki Kusu. Looking at the other figure that appeared, Sujin Kamamura immediately felt relaxed. If she came here now, it meant that Muyang was coming as well. On Muyang's side, there was a force that could almost change the entire situation. With their participation, Soul Society's side would definitely be able to reverse the current situation. This is really too much, to actually make my clothes tattered. Bang! Bang! The deep voice of Bambietta came out from the raging fire. The repressed tone made people clearly feel the anger hidden under her calmness. It was as if she wanted to destroy everything in the surroundings. Don't be too self-righteous. Shinigami. Boom. A beam of racier light suddenly appeared, and the violent racier fluctuations made Suzuki Kusu and the other three people all change their faces. Even Lilynette, who was playing with Stark, stopped. Stark's body swayed and came out of the opposite side of Bambietta. Looking at the girl floating in the air opposite him, there was a rare solemnity in his eyes. Such a Ryoryoku was really not to be underestimated. Quincy, Volstendig. A pair of wings formed by racier appeared on her back, and there was also something like a hat made of racier on her head. The eyes of Bambietta were silent, but in that silence, there was a terrible force that would erupt at any time. I really don't want to use this. If I use it, the battle will end in an instant. Hearing a sound in front of her, Bambietta's expression suddenly changed, and he swung his hand backwards. According to what Hirako Shinji had said before, everything she saw was the opposite. How smart! When his body appeared in front of Bambietta, Zanpakuto, which was in Hirako Shinji's hand, waved hard, and in the next moment, a spray of blood seemed to spurt out and spray everywhere. Do not underestimate me. Her body suddenly shook, and countless attacks shot out from the wings behind Bambietta. They all attacked in all directions. In a situation where she could not distinguish between the front, back, and left, her choice was to destroy everything in front, left, and right, the embodiment of destruction. Seeing Bambietta's action, Suzuki Kusu smiled slightly. Zanpakuto shook slightly in her hand, and countless white threads suddenly appeared around Bambietta, wrapping her up like a cocoon. Boom! 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 A muffled sound rang out. The white cocoon that was wrapped around Bambietta suddenly expanded and turned into a strange shape. However, it did not crack. As the explosion disappeared, it gradually shrank back to its normal size. Don't look down on us, you stinking woman. A trace of irritation flashed across Candace's face. There seemed to be lightning flashing on her body. Her body flashed and she appeared next to Suzuki Kusu. The outstretched palm of her hand flashed with lightning. A terrifying power was brewing in it. As I said, everything you see is reversed. Hirako Shinji's body moved, and his hands held the knife and waved down. Puff! Damn it! She reached out to cover her wound, and Candace's eyes were full of anger. The damn Shinigami actually injured her. The speed is very fast. In such a situation, you can still avoid my attack. Not bad. Taking a few steps back, Hirako Shinji held his own Zanpakuto in his hand and looked at the opposite Quincy with a little solemnity in his eyes. I thought it was a woman, so I paid attention to it when I attacked. I didn't expect that I underestimated you. While speaking, Hirako Shinji's body moved forward little by little, but Candace did not dare to act rashly. The other party's ability was too strange. Before she knew it clearly, she could only make a simple move. It was better to deal with the myriad changes without changing. Stop, stop, not forward. It is a very smart decision. However, this will not change your ending. A snow-white saber light suddenly chopped down in front of Candace. Her body shook, and a pair of wings appeared on her back. Candace reached out to hold a thunder-shaped rapier saber and waved it behind her back. I forgot to tell you. What you see is also the opposite. A strange smile appeared on Hirako Shinji's face. The body that was originally behind her disappeared, reappeared in front of Candace, and the zanpakuto in his hand chopped down. Whine. I don't only have a sword as my weapon. With a sinister expression on her face, she looked at Hirako Shinji who had a look of disbelief. Candace suddenly exerted strength in her hand, and at the same time, she activated her ability. A strong electric current came from her knife and passed to Hirako Shinji, which immediately made his body tremble. After being hit by tens of thousands of volts of electric current, your body won't be able to move. The smile on her face became even wider. The rapier knife in Candace's other hand ruthlessly chopped down. It seemed that she saw Hirako Shinji's body was cut in half, and Candace's eyes were full of excitement. I am really sorry. The tens of thousands of volts of electric current is not enough to paralyze my body. Just as Candace thought that her attack was very likely to succeed, Hirako Shinji flashed a smile on his face, and his body disappeared from the sight of the other party again. At the same time, a voice sounded in Candace's ear. Not good. Feeling Hirako Shinji appear behind her, a trace of panic flashed in Candace's eyes. If she was hit again like this, she would really be finished. Her body moved in an instant, as if turning into a lightning bolt, trying to avoid Hirako Shinji's attack, but she was still hit on the shoulder by the opponent's zanpakuto, and an arm was almost cut off. Swish. Just as Hirako Shinji was about to pursue the victory, a knife light suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked his way. This is. Looking at Shinigami in a dead tyrant suit in front of him, Hirako Shinji's eyes flashed a trace of surprise. The other party was definitely Shinigami. Although he could not call his name, he had indeed seen the other party in Seriidii. But, why did the other party attack him now? Hey Candace, I just saved your life. Gigi opened her arms and jumped in front of Candace, with a playful smile on her face. Damn that guy, I will blow him into a pulp. Feeling the pain of the wound on her shoulder, Candace's eyes were full of hatred. Gigi, help me cure it. Ha! Can I? When he heard Candace's words, Gigi's face suddenly showed an extremely excited expression. She even drooled a little, and her eyes shone with a strange light. Idiot! Don't look like a happy idiot. Don't use blood to treat it. This degree should be able to do it. Okay. Hearing the other party's answer, Gigi's spirit suddenly became low, and she flew to the ground listlessly, pulling a Shinigami. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Anyway, they are all Quincy. If they don't die, they can't become zombies. She kept comforting herself, but the loss on Gigi's face was still obvious. As she moved her hand, the balls of flesh wriggled like they had life, flying to Candace's body and healing her wounds. Don't be so impatient, a sow like you won't be able to analyze such a complicated ability. Liltato also fell from the sky and stood beside Candace. The words that came out of her mouth were very vulgar, which was very inconsistent with her cute appearance of a child. What did you say? When you are in a disadvantageous situation, you still want to go up and fight with others. Are you an idiot? You should have let Gigi trap them, and we should escape first. What the hell is going on? Looking at Shinigami in front of him who was rushing towards him one after another, Hirako Shinji's eyes were tangled. Among the people who rushed over, there was no lack of subordinates. Facing these familiar faces, he could not do anything. The Quincy named Gigi, her script is, Z, the zombie. She can turn people who are stained with her blood into zombies who only obey her orders. Just as Hirako Shinji was worried about Shinigami who attacked him in front of him, Suzuki Kusu's voice came from the side. You know a lot, Shinigami. Hearing a sound in front of her, Bambietta's expression suddenly changed, and he swung his hand backwards. According to what Hirako Shinji had said before, everything she saw was the opposite. How smart! When his body appeared in front of Bambietta, Zanpakuto, which was in Hirako Shinji's hand, waved hard, and in the next moment, a spray of blood seemed to spurt out and spray everywhere. Do not underestimate me. Her body suddenly shook, and countless attacks shot out from the wings behind Bambietta. They all attacked in all directions. In a situation where she could not distinguish between the front, back, and left, her choice was to destroy everything in front, left, and right, the embodiment of destruction. Seeing Bambietta's action, Suzuki Kusu smiled slightly. Zanpakuto shook slightly in her hand, and countless white threads suddenly appeared around Bambietta, wrapping her up like a cocoon. Boom! 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 A muffled sound rang out. The white cocoon that was wrapped around Bambietta suddenly expanded and turned into a strange shape. However, it did not crack. As the explosion disappeared, it gradually shrank back to its normal size. Don't look down on us, you stinking woman. A trace of irritation flashed across Candace's face. There seemed to be lightning flashing on her body. Her body flashed and she appeared next to Suzuki Kusu. The outstretched palm of her hand flashed with lightning. A terrifying power was brewing in it. As I said, everything you see is reversed. Hirako Shinji's body moved, and his hands held the knife and waved down. Puff! Damn it! She reached out to cover her wound, and Candace's eyes were full of anger. The damn Shinigami actually injured her. The speed is very fast. In such a situation, you can still avoid my attack. Not bad. Taking a few steps back, Hirako Shinji held his own Zanpakuto in his hand and looked at the opposite Quincy with a little solemnity in his eyes. I thought it was a woman, so I paid attention to it when I attacked. I didn't expect that I underestimated you. While speaking, Hirako Shinji's body moved forward little by little, but Candace did not dare to act rashly. The other party's ability was too strange. Before she knew it clearly, she could only make a simple move. It was better to deal with the myriad changes without changing. Stop, not forward. It is a very smart decision. However, this will not change your ending. A snow-white saber light suddenly chopped down in front of Candace. Her body shook, and a pair of wings appeared on her back. Candace reached out to hold a thunder-shaped rapier saber and waved it behind her back. I forgot to tell you. What you see is also the opposite. A strange smile appeared on Hirako Shinji's face. The body that was originally behind her disappeared, reappeared in front of Candace, and the Zanpakuto in his hand chopped down. Whine. I don't only have a sword as my weapon. With a sinister expression on her face, she looked at Hirako Shinji who had a look of disbelief. Candace suddenly exerted strength in her hand, and at the same time, she activated her ability. A strong electric current came from her knife and passed to Hirako Shinji, which immediately made his body tremble. After being hit by tens of thousands of volts of electric current, your body won't be able to move. The smile on her face became even wider. The rapier knife in Candace's other hand ruthlessly chopped down. It seemed that she saw Hirako Shinji's body was cut in half, and Candace's eyes were full of excitement. I am really sorry. The tens of thousands of volts of electric current is not enough to paralyze my body. Just as Candace thought that her attack was very likely to succeed, Hirako Shinji flashed a smile on his face, and his body disappeared from the sight of the other party again. At the same time, a voice sounded in Candace's ear. Not good. Feeling Hirako Shinji appear behind her, a trace of panic flashed in Candace's eyes. If she was hit again like this, she would really be finished. Her body moved in an instant, as if turning into a lightning bolt, trying to avoid Hirako Shinji's attack, but she was still hit on the shoulder by the opponent's Zanpakuto, and an arm was almost cut off. Swish! Just as Hirako Shinji was about to pursue the victory, a knife light suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked his way. This is... Looking at Shinigami in a dead tyrant suit in front of him, Hirako Shinji's eyes flashed a trace of surprise. The other party was definitely Shinigami. Although he could not call his name, he had indeed seen the other party in Seriidii. But, why did the other party attack him now? Hey Candace, I just saved your life. Gigi opened her arms and jumped in front of Candace, with a playful smile on her face. Damn that guy, I will blow him into a pulp. Feeling the pain of the wound on her shoulder, Candace's eyes were full of hatred. Gigi, help me cure it. Ha! Can I? When he heard Candace's words, Gigi's face suddenly showed an extremely excited expression. She even drooled a little, and her eyes shone with a strange light. Idiot! Don't look like a happy idiot. Don't use blood to treat it. This degree should be able to do it. Okay. Hearing the other party's answer, Gigi's spirit suddenly became low, and she flew to the ground listlessly, pulling a Shinigami. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Anyway, they are all Quincy. If they don't die, they can't become zombies. She kept comforting herself, but the loss on Gigi's face was still obvious. As she moved her hand, the balls of flesh wriggled like they had life, flying to Candace's body and healing her wounds. Don't be so impatient, a sow like you won't be able to analyze such a complicated ability. Liltato also fell from the sky and stood beside Candace. The words that came out of her mouth were very vulgar, which was very inconsistent with her cute appearance of a child. What did you say? When you are in a disadvantageous situation, you still want to go up and fight with others. Are you an idiot? You should have let Gigi trap them, and we should escape first. What the hell is going on? Looking at Shinigami in front of him who was rushing towards him one after another, Hirako Shinji's eyes were tangled. Among the people who rushed over, there was no lack of subordinates. Facing these familiar faces, he could not do anything. The Quincy named Gigi, her script is, Z, the zombie. She can turn people who are stained with her blood into zombies who only obey her orders. Just as Hirako Shinji was worried about Shinigami who attacked him in front of him, Suzuki Kusu's voice came from the side. You know a lot, Shinigami. Oh my, when did Dangai become like this? Looking at Dangai, which was completely different from the original, Ikemara Jin reached out and pulled his hair, with a strange smile on his face. It should have started when the Quincy reappeared. They have destroyed countless hollow in Hueco Mundo, which has caused the distortion of the world. If we don't take measures quickly, the world will be destroyed by collision. Looking at the turbulence in the Dangai, Muyang's face was calm, but his eyes exuded a kind of heart-racing calmness, as if he felt Muyang's mood. Ikemara Jin's smile was also slightly restrained, and he followed Muyang in silence. The three people walked quickly in the dim Dangai, only hearing the sound of clothes flashing. Pa! The footsteps suddenly stopped, Muyang's eyes turned to one side, looking in a direction without any emotion. There was a mass of restraint twisted there, it looked nothing different from everything around. Get out, even if you hide, you can't hide the smell of the Quincy on you that I hate to smell. Hearing Muyang's words, Ikemara Jin's face was slightly stunned, subconsciously turned his eyes to that side, but he did not see anything. Although there was a strange feeling, no matter how he looked, he did not see anyone. Harabelle did not say a word. She just stood quietly behind Muyang, but a hand was already on the hilt of her sword. She knew that Muyang would not talk nonsense. Since he said it, there must be something over there. Not long after Muyang's voice fell, a shadow on the ground suddenly squirmed, and a figure climbed out of the shadow, like a ghost. Is it you who killed Gremi? Sure enough, you have some ability. I hid so well that you found me. The body climbed out of the dark shadow on the ground little by little and saw the Quincy costume on the other side. Ikemara Jin and Harabel suddenly tightened their faces. The other party was indeed a Quincy, but he could hide from their perception. It was definitely not a simple thing. However, since I am here, all three of you can't pass here. What a big tone. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Looking at the opposite Quincy, Muyang frowned slightly. In this war, all the Quincy had their own special abilities. Those abilities were all incredible. Fighting without knowing what the other party's ability was really not a happy thing. After all, he was used to having all the information of the other party before the battle. If only Kusu was here. Looking at the strangely dressed Quincy in front of him, Muyang could not help but think of this idea. If he had Suzuki Kusu's ability, he could definitely know the enemy's ability easily, and if he could learn the enemy's ability before the battle, he could at least increase the odds of winning by 2 points. Oh, if you don't believe it, you can try it. Don't worry, I won't fight back. While speaking, the Quincy raised his bare feet and took a step forward. Muyang and others had not made a move, but he actually wanted to force them to make a move. Kamishini no Yari. A silver knife light suddenly shot out, and the speed did not give the enemy any time to react. Ikemara Jin Zanpakuto shot out, and the blade looked like it was going to pass through the body of Quincy, but the moment it approached the other side, the direction changed strangely. The blade should have been straight forward, but in front of the other side, it turned a corner, deliberately avoiding the other side's body. The pupils suddenly contracted, and Zanpakuto in Ikemara Jin's hand changed back to his original appearance in an instant. His eyelids drooped slightly, and he looked at Zanpakuto in his hand, but Ikemara Jin's heart was set off a wave. His own Kamishini no Yari actually turned just now. It was not only Ikemara Jin who was shocked, Muyang and Harabel were also shocked by what happened before. The moment Zanpakuto approached the other side, he actually avoided the other side's body and even turned a corner. Look, not to mention you, even Zanpakuto can't pass through me. While speaking, the Quincy did not stop. Step by step, he approached Muyang and others, his face still looking like he was going to die, but Muyang did not dare to look down on the other side at all. The other side's ability was too strange. My script is, W, the wind, Nianzal Wizal. As soon as the voice of Quincy fell, Ikemara Jin and Harabel both made a move at the same time, and the two waved at the same time. In his hand, Zanpakuto shot again and aimed at Nianzal's head, and Ikemara Jin's face curved with a sly smile. Shwa. Just as Ikemara Jin attacked from the front and pulled the other side's line of sight, Harabel appeared behind him. A layer of golden light flashed on the top of Zanpakuto in his hand. With the wave of her arm, a slash left the body and cut down on the other side's body. Really, it's useless. His hands were still in his clothes, and Nianzal looked relaxed. He didn't care about the joint attack of Ikemara Jin and Harabel at all. Obviously, he didn't think that their attack would hurt him. Sure enough, when Harabel's attack was about to fall on him, the attack was suddenly affected by an inexplicable force, and the direction was instantly distorted and thrown aside. Muyang's arm moved, and a slash flew out from his body and collided with Harabel's distorted impact. The two forces instantly offset each other. This was in the Dangai. If the movement was too big, there might be some serious consequences, especially now that Soul Society, Human World, and Hueco Mundo were not stable. As the Dangai that was connected to the bond, there could not be any problems at this time. There are often people who say that my speech and teeth are not clear enough. The enemy discovered by refers to the enemy discovered by instinctively. Not only the enemy seen by the eyes, even if you can't see, the enemy is the enemy. No matter where you attack from, no matter how you attack, you will avoid my body. As he spoke, Nianzal raised his arm and pointed a finger at Zanpakuto, who was in front of Ikemara Jin. His heart tightened, and Ikemara Jin's Zanpakuto instantly changed back to normal, but there was a small gap at the edge of Zanpakuto's blade. Seeing that gap, Ikemara Jin's eyes narrowed. I see.